Call to order and roll call. Directors Hanson. Meek. Myers.
Here.
Peterson here. Ray. Here. Williams. Here. And Weininger is not here. She said she will be late and will arrive. Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah, I just turned it off. Thank you. Okay, we will move into item number 3, the DCS Spotlight. I'll turn it over to our acting superintendents.
Good evening, Andy Abner here, and I wanted to let you all know that February is Career and Technical Education Month, and tonight's Spotlight video ties perfectly into that theme. This short video highlights some of the amazing hands-on career and technical education programs available in Douglas County School District high schools, and I'm very proud to present this as I was one of those vocational teachers back in the day when I moved to Douglas County. As you'll see from the video, or you may not see, these opportunities allow our students to enter right into workforce, to earn certificates. Also, when it's a concurrent enrollment class, it allows them to save money and to advance into their career a little bit faster. In last school year, 2021, we saved more than $3 million in college tuition thanks to concurrent enrollment programs. I'd like to thank Danny Windsor, who's sitting here with us today, as he's overseeing this program and the advancement of this program here in Douglas County School District. So without further ado, let's take a look here at this video.
No matter where you go in Douglas County,
I teach automotive technology.
I teach yearbook, newspaper, and video production.
Cosmetology is just always going to be there.
our students are getting ready.
I'm passionate about culinary, and I think this class will help a lot.
They're getting ready for what's next with Career and Technical Education, or CTE.
I think I could actually make this a good career.
I do want to have my own salon.
Not only are they learning where their passions lie,
we try to explore all the different avenues of engineering.
They're getting college credit during high school.
They can go to college with a head start.
Or skills they can use to enter the workforce right after they graduate.
They can go straight from here into a job, not even have to worry about going into college.
These are opportunities you won't find in many places.
It was my golden ticket into the fire service.
Douglas County is one of the few that actually does it.
In Douglas County.
It's really inspired me.
Keep feeding it, there you go.
Our students will be ready for what's next.
The only thing you can do is do it.
In our classes, it's not fake real world, it's just real world.
How about a big round of applause for our CTE programming? And also Chris Shalene and our communications team for putting together an amazing video as they do. In the coming days, this team will be putting out and sharing short video clips on social media and in our newsletters, highlighting more of the amazing CTE programs. So please stay tuned for that. Thank you.
Yeah, great thing on CTE, and that's something I think that we were able to improve upon here in the future. We've got, of course, the campus formerly known as CU South, official name TBD, and something I think we're really going to see growth of in the district, so looking forward to that. Into item number 4, we've got the Long-Range Planning Committee and Boundary Consultant School Capacity and Boundary Analysis, and we're specifically going to hear tonight about the Thunder Ridge High School Theater. So with that, we will turn it over. I think Derek is...
Good evening, directors. Good evening, community. I'd like to introduce Derek Sturts, our planning manager. We have a distinguished guest with us, as well as one of our leading consultants, to brief what we think is very important school capacity boundary analysis, and in particular in the Thunder Ridge High School feeder. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. Distinguished board, my name is Derek Sturts. I'm a planning manager. I'm pleased to introduce the Long Range Planning Committee representatives and our boundary consultant, Shannon Bingham from Western Demographics. I'd like to hand the microphone off to Michelle Major, longstanding member of the Long Range Planning Committee. She will go through, excellent.
Good evening. I want to thank the Board of Education for taking the time to learn together about this feeder area, to understand the growth, and thoughtfully plan for the future. I'm Michelle Major, and I'm a member of the Long-Range Planning Committee, and also the chair of the School Capacity and Boundary Subcommittee. And this is Brad Geiger. He is the vice chair of the LRPC. And then we have Mr. Bingham, who is our consultant, who will be bringing much wisdom to the conversation. And we have Megan McDonald, who is the vice chair of the SCUBA committee, which is the School Capacity Boundary and Subcommittee. And then we have Larry Mugler, who is our chair of the Long Range Planning Committee. And we'll all be part of this discussion as we move forward to the discussion portion a bit later. And if you can go to the next slide. The agenda is listed on this slide, and I'm going to kind of start in with the introduction of the larger feeder area, and then I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Bingham, who will give a lot of the data and insight, and then hopefully we'll have time for some quality discussion so that we can learn what the board direction and board wishes are for the strategies in this feeder area as it grows. Can you go to the next slide? This shows a map of the Thunder Ridge feeder. It is a very large land area, and it encompasses 2 state parks. There's Chatfield State Park, and there is Roxborough State Park, as well as an expansive amount of national forest, and those areas are kind of in green. Then the blue area is the actual feeder area of Thunder Ridge, and it's split down the middle by US Highway 85, sometimes referred to as Santa Fe. So that's a geographical kind of barrier that creates some complications within that feeder area. And the feeder is made up of a total of 7 elementary buildings. 5 of those elementary schools are in Highlands Ranch, and 2 of the elementary schools are unique, and they're located in Roxborough. They're in the southern, kind of in the center of the picture up there. And the reason that they're unique is the Roxborough schools were intentionally designed to serve as 1 school in 2 buildings. So we have the primary school, Roxborough Primary, serves kindergarten through 2nd grade, while the intermediate school serves 3rd through 6th graders. So that was intentionally designed to serve that outlying community and bring unity to that community. So they chose to have it designed that way when the 2nd school was built in 2008. And in addition to those neighborhood schools, the 7 elementary facilities, there's 2 different charter schools just to the north that combined, there's Ben Franklin and STEM, and combined they have about 16% of the students from within this boundary area attend those 2 charter schools. And you can go to the next slide. This is an aerial overview shot that helps to display the actual dirt that's being moved and scraped in those new development areas. So that's the areas in Solstice, just to the north of Titan Road, and Sterling Ranch has already built a large amount of housing, but to the south of the houses that are already built and completed and occupied, you have additional development that is coming. So you can see they're preparing the land and beginning to build additional housing. And there's also the future Waterton Road, which will be an extension which will tie in from the current Roxborough community across the south of the Sterling Ranch community, and it'll make a better connection to the Roxborough schools once it is connected, the elementary schools there. And on the next slide, this map focuses on it's a little bit tighter in and focuses in on those elementary schools that are in the Thunder Ridge feeder system. If you look in the red next to each elementary school, there are 2 numbers. The first number is the percentage of enrollment as it pertains to the ideal capacity. The first number shows the current, actual, this year, the enrollment. And then the number to the right, there's a little arrow and a number to the right, that shows the projection for 5 years out. And if you look at the schools in kind of the eastern part of Highlands Ranch within this feeder system, they have declining enrollment projected. If you look at the schools, there's 1 in Highlands Ranch, which is Coyote Creek, and then there's Roxborough Primary and Roxborough Intermediate. All 3 of those schools are currently having students from Sterling Ranch and Solstice bused to those schools, and you can see that projections show in 5 years we will be exceeding our ideal seating capacity in all 3 of those schools. In the long term, eventually, we will reach a place where at build out of this whole entire area, then we will eventually, and that will be Sterling Ranch and the Solstice and additional developments being developed, then we will have 1 new high school projected with 1 new middle school and 5 new elementary schools. And consistent with the other neighborhoods in the district, we would anticipate that we'd also have new charters move into this area as well. Next slide. And this is kind of the background of the school capacity and boundary, oftentimes abbreviated SCUBA. Our subcommittee is here just to watch schools and their capacities. And whenever we see a capacity that's outside of the ideal, that's when we start to pay attention. And when we know it's not going to subside, that's when we know we need to take some sort of action to try to ease the situation. And so we have many different tools that we can implement, and those are listed in our master capital plan, which the LRPC reviews and brings to the board annually. And on page 34, there's a huge list of different tools we can approach and use. Boundary changes, calendar changes, grade configuration, overflow busing, program change, an addition to an existing facility, mobile units, purchase and tenant finish of existing facilities. So that's just some of the potentials that could be considered. And then I wanted to give a better understanding and context for what we mean when we say an ideal capacity at an elementary or high school. What that means is that reflects how the building is currently being used and the current usage. It does not reflect some sort of formula of we have this many classrooms, so therefore we should seat this many students. It reflects how the building is currently utilized and the needs that are being met within that building. And ideal capacities do not include any mobile seats that are at a school site. And a little bit deeper into mobiles, they are options to provide seats for enrollment or childcare. And the Thunder Ridge Feeder School System currently has 34 mobile pads, which is required to have a mobile on site. You need that pad first, and 9 of those are currently occupied with a mobile. And finally, transportation is a tool that we are currently using to take care of the students who have arrived in those new housing developments, and we don't yet have a neighborhood school built. So we are busing those students from Sterling Ranch and Solstice to Coyote Creek, Roxborough Primary, and Roxborough Intermediate. And the length of the bus ride times are long and challenging given the distance that needs to be traveled in this area. So that's something to consider. And then at this point, I'd like to pass the presentation over to our consultant, Mr. Bingham. He has worked across the state of Colorado and the nation, and he brings critical insight and experience to this discussion. Thanks for being here, Shannon.
Thanks, Michelle.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a privilege to be here. I'd like to continue the presentation on my little timer here and show you kind of the, get you to where you know as much about Solstice Sterling Ranch and the greater feeder system as we do. So we're trying to really make sure everybody understands development pace and a variety of other issues. This area is referred to by Douglas County Planning as the Chatfield urban area. So in addition to Solstice, which you see up there at the north end of this graphic, and Sterling Ranch, which is in the midriff of it, there's probably well over an additional 4 or 5 square miles that will develop between now and what we call build out. And so in the school planning business, we do a lot of what are called build out analyses, where we try to make decisions that will be long-standing based upon how a community will look once all of the homes are built. So we're just trying to avoid moving families multiple times. And I've worked for probably 140 school districts over the last 40 years, and pretty much you get asked by families that are going to be impacted by change, move us once, and if you move us again, move us home, which means move us to a neighborhood school. So a lot of what I try to do in working with Colorado districts and districts all over the western U.S. is to try to adhere to that ethic to a certain extent. And some of our practice here in Douglas County has been very much linked to trying to be stable in our assignment. So what we were looking at was this overall community and trying to understand how it would ultimately build. So we have networked with not only the developers of Solstice and Sterling Ranch, but also the individual builders. We're kind of regulars in all of these sales offices. We go around and meet and greet and try to just find out if people have the information that they need. But for the most part, we're just trying to stay in communication with everybody and understand what will happen here, in addition with what the county is forecasting with additional vacant land. You see areas 9C and 9D, which are areas that we have potential boundary actions slated that the Long-Range Planning Committee is currently considering. Those are identified in this map. The next map shows kind of the big picture of how this area will develop. You see a lot of it will probably be ag or grazing almost indefinitely. A lot of these are natural areas. There are a lot of little 10-inch browns in the South Platte right now feeding on RS2s, if anybody's interested. There's a lot of natural area and a lot of recreational opportunity in this area. It's an incredibly attractive area to live. We have a lot of our Lockheed Martin staff that do not live immediately in the Roxborough area that drop their kids on the way to school. The staff at the primary and intermediate building drop their kids, bring their kids to school with them. It's an incredibly appealing area. All of these areas you see labeled PD are going to be planned development area. So that's that additional 4 to 5 acres that will develop as residential over time. The Sterling Ranch filings are labeled there. SR 1 and 2 are the mature part of the development. That's already happened and it has been assigned to Roxborough. We always thought we would not tamper with that. They've been there long term. That's their home destination attendance area. So that was kind of fixed. But we're looking at filing 4, which was immediately south of the power line easement, which was the next filing. In the last scuba cycle, we assigned that to Coyote Creek. So we did take action there. And then up in Solstice, we actually moved Solstice filings 1 through 3, which were active at that time. We also assigned those to Coyote Creek. Now, this assignment of area to adjacent schools with room is standard operating procedure for school districts all over the United States, short of bond-funded local neighborhood schools. When you have that boundary opportunity available to you, you assign based on proximity. The other Sterling Ranch filings 5, 6, 7, and 3 are also shown there. 3 is immediately adjacent to the primary and intermediate campus over there, and it's always been our assumption based on proximity that that made a lot of sense for there to be no deviation from that being assigned as the neighborhood that would be assigned. Up to the north, you see Sterling Ranch, or Solstice filings 4 and 5, which are the new filings that were not active when this first scuba process happened 18 months ago, and we didn't assign those filings. So I'll come back to that in just a moment. The next slide shows kind of the scheme of assignment that we were thinking of during the prior scuba process, that based on proximity, Sterling Ranch filings 4, 5, and 6, because they're on the east side of the development, if we're going to overflow a neighborhood, we should overflow off of the east side of Sterling Ranch. On the west side, we have, and northwest, we have the 2 mature filings, 1 and 2, up there to the north. And then we have the newer filings 3, which is developing now and will rapidly develop over the summer. And the new filings 7, which are over on the west side. Now, those are proximate to Roxborough. They're over there by Roxborough. So what made sense to us at the time was that those could be assigned to Roxborough and wouldn't have to be moved until a neighborhood local school was built and they could go home to their own school right down the street. Same with 4, 5, and 6, that we chose Coyote Creek and other overflow destinations because we'll probably fill up Coyote Creek in 36 months or so. But we went ahead and said we would assign 4 now and consult with our various stakeholders regarding 5 and 6 later and make a decision later on at that time. Solstice brings another 700 units to that eastern group. For the Sterling Ranch subdivision in total, if we don't consider Solstice, the assignment to Roxborough versus Coyote Creek is 2-to-1 based on lot count. So we have 65% of the lots are in Roxborough, primary and intermediate, and the balance are in the overflow system if we move filings 5 and 6. And again, that's just been a question mark at this point. We haven't really entered into that, haven't conducted the research, haven't consulted stakeholders, but if you just do the math, that would be how it would break out. Moving on to the next slide, you will see our attempt to try to build out the whole sub-region of the district. So if we add up everything that's in Solstice, Sterling Ranch, and the vacant land that Douglas County Planning has told us will develop as residential, that would get us about 4.8 elementary schools, 1 middle and 1 high school in the neighborhood category. Now, our average neighborhood to charter split within the public school sector of the market is about 65 to 73%. So I am assuming that a third of that segment would be charter, and we wouldn't need to construct neighborhood schools because that's how the other feeder systems in the Douglas County School District have built out. That's the stable, standard development pattern for new school creation in this community, and so we're integrating that into our assumptions there. The other thing that you should know is within those market share categories, we have other players. So we have the CSI charters, the Colorado Charter School Institute. That's about 1,423 of this year's enrollment district-wide. And then we have out-of-district online charters, private schools, big church schools like Lutheran High School and Regis and a variety of others. So there are other players in that market share category. We think build-out might happen in about 2040. So you can do the math there. We're probably 20 plus years away from that, but we have some pretty significant units and about 9,700 additional dwelling units that will be required. The next slide shows our enrollment versus capacity, and we went ahead and plowed that the east side areas that I identified, including Sterling 5 and 6, into Coyote Creek, and then you're seeing a 5-year capacity analysis there, and you see Coyote in the red at 142%, Roxborough Intermediate at 111, and Roxborough Primary at 101. Now, what we were thinking back then was that we would try to fill up the 2 Roxborough buildings, not overload them, and then move on to somebody else. So what we did was we designated what we thought was enough development to fill those buildings, and then we looked at other strategies to address the remaining area. Now, that would happen over a 5-year period. Having empty seats sit empty while schools are crowding around you is very difficult to do. So there's a certain amount of patience. This is based on planning kind of a thing that's very difficult in public education to get those kind of things done because there are empty seats sitting there. And there are empty seats at both Roxborough Primary and Intermediate. We had a downswing as a result of the pandemic. A lot of those children we did not recover. They went to non-public alternatives and did not return, meaning they didn't return to the neighborhood schools, they didn't return to charters, okay? So a lot of those kids left us for good. So there are some empty seats sitting there. The drive times there you can see are not drastically different, but those are Google drive times basically. And keep in mind a bus probably stops 8 to 10 times on a standard route. Each stop takes about 3 minutes. So depending upon how many times the bus stops, that adds between 18 and 25 minutes to an average run, depending upon how dense of a community you're in. For example, in Alaska, those same routes would probably be 45-minute routes. So keep that in mind. The mileage is also an issue because with a good set of binoculars, you can stand on the roof of your truck and see the roof of Coyote Creek from Solstice, but you can't get there, okay? You have to drive around. We've got Highway 85, which has gone 5-lane, almost halfway to Castle Rock by now. Titan Road's intersection with Santa Fe is not good, depending upon when you're there. And if you're driving from Roxborough to Eastern Highlands Ranch, you can burn a good half hour if you're not lucky. So we acknowledge that is part of what we're addressing here as we look at the overall void of school facilities in this area. There are 2 other areas in the district that are also school facility voids. And when I say a void, I mean for a 4-mile radius, we have no facilities, 3.5-mile radius. So that would be Ridgegate, and Canyons is one of our voids. Canyons, Ridgegate is a void. And then the Crystal Valley Montaigne area is a void. And a lot of people think Montaigne is all senior. It's not, it's 40% senior. So there's a lot of housing down in that south central part of Colorado, of Castle Rock.
I'm sorry if I could. Those other areas, it is our plan on the LRPC to address those in another session. This is about the Slender Ridge feeder, but just know this isn't the only unique situation in the district, and so that information will come to you at a later time on those areas.
We have done boundary changes in both of those areas to try to relieve immediate overcrowding. So that is something that remains, that has come to both the board and been dealt with in the LRPC.
Okay, so next slide shows some of this neighborhood mix within that public school sector of the overall education market. So we've got Coyote Creek at about 57%. The other 43 is charter. El Dorado at 58%. The other 42% is charter. Roxborough at 64. The other 36% is charter. Saddle Ranch at 68%, the other 32% is charter. Trailblazer at 51%, the other 49% is charter. And then Stone Mountain, I clipped off this graphic for some reason, but they are 76% neighborhood and 24% charter. And then Ranch View is 61%, and Thunder Ridge is 73%. And again, this is a little bit low for the mix between neighborhood and charters district-wide, but for the most part, you can assume that mix district-wide is about between a third, 2/3, and a quarter and 3/4. So it's between 25 and 33%, depending upon where you are. The next slide shows students from the Roxborough area that leave it. So you can see middle and elementary, about 10% of those students go to Ben Franklin. We can see STEM has about 5% share at the elementary and 8% share at the middle and a 5% share at the high school level. And then you can see a variety of other neighborhood schools around the district that students go to. And I will note that there's a little bit of volatility in these numbers because a lot of those families that work at Lockheed Martin bring their kids to work with them, and so they drop there and reside in other attendance areas elsewhere in the district. And there's other volatility here. The next slide shows kind of the strategy that we would use as a long-range committee on identifying solutions. So from a short-term standpoint, meaning 36 months probably, we kind of have to put kids someplace. And if we don't want to say, okay, now you're here, we ran out of space there, now you're there, and filing to filing, in order to be consistent, we try to look at least short-term and midterm as far as problem solving goes. Midterm would be about 5 years leading up to when we have a bond election. You're in a major capital planning cycle right now that will certainly include new school facilities, so that integrates into that. And then from a long-term standpoint, build out, we always want to be thinking about build out, because I hate having that mom in front of me at a public meeting explaining, you moved me 9 years ago and now you're moving me again. And I've done this for 40 years, so I get that kind of accountability a lot of the time. And I don't really like to move neighborhoods multiple times. So that's one of the ethics there. The next slide talks about what's pending. So at this point, Area 9C, which you saw up there at the top, addresses Solstice filings 4 and 5, which are currently building, currently selling. Solstice wants its development to remain together. So the sales staff in the Solstice office for filings 4 and 5 have been referring families to Coyote Creek. Okay, even though formally their assignment is Roxborough Primary and Intermediate, they have been referred to Coyote Creek. Those filings were not building. They were scraped when we did the last scuba process 18 months ago, and now they're actually occupying. It's taking about 10 to 12 months to build a house now, after you pay for it. So keep in mind that there's a bit of a lag there, and that so we still have the opportunity to assign these neighborhoods before there's what I call significant occupancy. And all up and down the Front Range, when we make boundary changes, we're trying to figure out, is there a way we can do it before homes occupy? Before people bond with the neighborhood, before you say, I bought that house with the understanding that that was my school, we try to avoid as much of that as possible by addressing that proactively. So the next slide talks about Area 9D, which is Sterling Ranch 5 and 6. Right now, that's an open book. Filing 4 is moving very rapidly. I think they're past 60% sold at this point. There are some really attractive buys in that neighborhood. The values in Solstice also are incredible as far as what you can get for your housing dollar right now. But 5 and 6 weren't activated. We've got action in filing 5. And the east-west arterial, that Waterton Road that Michelle referred to, that's 18 months away from having cars on it. And the folks in filing 4 are seeing the writing on the wall. That's a direct conduit to the Roxborough campus. Why can't we go to Roxborough? Which is fair. So that's a complicating factor because of the availability of that road. You now don't have to go up and out onto Titan Road and then back down. So that's a complicating factor. We continue to conduct research on what makes the most sense for filings 5 and 6, but if we adhere to that east-west, how many homes, how many filings can we put in the Roxborough campus and fill it and try to be consistent over the next 60 months. And notice I talk 60 months, not 5 years. You'd be amazed how quick that's going to happen, okay? By the time you bond, you design, you build, it's going to be 5 years, but it's going to be a lot of water under the bridge because these subdivisions are building 300 or 400 new homes a year. So we're looking at a lot of impact. Let's see, next slide. So what's on the table in front of LRPC is consider what to do with a formal assignment of Solstice filings 4 and 5, including some sort of stakeholder involvement. The committee and the administration have been incredibly effective in making sure that we talk to everybody, not only the sales staffs, but the parents. We have virtual meetings, multiple virtual meetings. We distribute flyers. We have mailings. We try to listen as carefully as we possibly can to not only the parents, but the builders and the education leaders. and everybody that would be affected by a change, from transportation to food service to early childhood education on down. The committee has been incredibly conscientious in the changes that we've done so far to make sure that happens. So that would be part of that cycle. Area 9D would address filings 5 and 6, and that could also include stakeholder involvement from the parties I just mentioned. And then we know we're probably going to fill up Coyote Creek, and we'll need some sort of a midterm strategy once we fill that building, if we continue on the path that we're on. Now, as Michelle mentioned on that page 34 of the capital plan, there are 8 other options other than these boundary changes mentioned as far as how you address capacity. There aren't many other rabbits in that hat. And I have to say that after having done this for almost 40 years, I've grabbed hold of some pretty funky looking rabbits as far as coming up with a change strategy that would have the least effect on families and children. And other than those 8 that are on that page, there's not a whole lot else you can do in a rapidly growing area where you have a capital facilities void, which is what we have here. So I think that's my last slide. What's the last one say? We'll call that the end. And I'll thank you for your attention and turn it back over to Derek.
Thank you. So as a result, this conversation was asked for by the LRPC to have the discussion. LRPC does the work of the research and gets all of these things assembled for the board to then make a recommendation and weigh those decisions with you. But ultimately, it's the decision of the board. So the conversation here is to get your insights, get your take, ask questions, understand thoroughly as much as the LRPC puts their nose to the grindstone in these issues. And so that's the necessity of this conversation, knowing that LRPC is going to come back to their sessions and work these issues with your insights. And so that is the purpose and intent of this dialogue.
May I add, Derek? For those who don't know me, I'm kind of the old guy on the LRPC. We have kind of an interesting opportunity here as we deal with 9C and 9D. We have not gone out to that area yet and solicited public comment on any of this. We've kind of done it because most of what we've done, we've moved empty spaces. We're still looking at moving empty spaces, but rapidly filling ones. If the board wants us to, this may be the time to start inquiring about broader issues there. How do you feel about, not just about moving 9C and 9D, but how do you feel about Coyote Creek? How long are you willing to drive? Are you willing to cross Santa Fe to get your kid to school? Are you willing to drive past Coyote Creek to get to one of the other less full elementary schools? Or have your kid on a bus for 30 minutes instead of 25? What we have found is that when you're making important decisions like this, that public outreach, a lot of listening, and a lot of thought is necessary to make good decisions. Now may be the time that we start asking broader questions out there. Honestly, 3 years ago, we thought the issue in Northwest was, what are we going to do about declining enrollment? We've got schools out there 50% capacity, and that becomes a problem. Now, 4 miles from there, we've got a complete void, and we're going to fill up 2 schools, 3 buildings, 2 schools in 5 years and maybe more. So talking to those people about, would you support a new school? How do you feel about charter schools? Because charter schools are going to come into that area. That's an absolute certainty. Do you want to go west or east? That kind of thing. Generally, parents want to take their kids in the direction that they're going. So we have a chance. We can ask narrow questions about 9C or 9D, or we can ask much broader questions and start to figure out what that neighborhood wants. Understanding that a lot of that neighborhood doesn't exist yet, and those people may not exist as well.
Before we have you give us good ideas, maybe we ought to ask first, do you have some questions about all the information you've heard already? So if you have questions for the committee or for Shannon, maybe that's a good place to start.
So
actually just a quick question about the mobiles that you said you had 9 currently. Can you explain more? Are they actual classrooms? Are they storage? What are you using them for?
Excellent question. Thank you. Most of them are for classrooms. It is a mix of storage. However, what you'll find is supply and demand. So where you have a lot of kids, you're going to be using your mobiles for classrooms. And then if one is on there, it's an expensive proposition to move a mobile. So some of those get used for other uses. That can be storage, that can be small breakouts, it can be staff. But generally speaking, when you have a mobile in place, it stays there for a while, and because it's an expensive proposition to move. When it gets back to those schools that have the capacity issues as they're climbing, most of those mobiles would be utilized for enrollment purposes, namely classrooms.
Derek, can you specify what putting a new mobile on a pad costs?
I think at this time it's about 200,000.
About 120.
About 120, and there's various reasons why. For instance, you can only do it at a certain time of year, and there's only a certain number of contractors that'll do that work. And so there's a market dynamic in regards to that. You have to deconstruct it, you have to haul it, you have to put it up, it's got to be inspected. So you have a short window when a lot of our maintenance and other things go on in our schools, and so it's not like you can really beat the market in the pricing there. So that's why those prices tend to be a little bit higher than what normally you would think.
Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge LRPC. That this committee, I don't know if people realize, is amazing in terms of knowing the trends of our county, anticipating like crazy. And when Sean, when you say you were surprised by some of these developments, that's a shocker, because usually there's no surprises in this committee. It's like, we know how many homes are coming in, and for us to see this accelerate over all of a sudden, something's going on. So, but I just want to acknowledge Michelle and Larry and Brad, first of all, for the and Megan as well, for the hard work this committee has done over the years. We rely so heavily on all of you to do this wonderful research. And Sean, you've been a friend of our district for many years. Thank you as well. A couple of questions, I guess. The first question is, if and when we have bonds to build a new school, what is the soonest? And I say this because I opened a school that was under a pretty rapid timeline. What's the soonest that doors can open? So on a typical schedule, once a bond is approved in November, we start digging dirt. When can we open the doors?
So Director, thanks for the question. Typically, and especially with a prototype school, it's conservative to say 3 summers after a bond passes is when an elementary can open. That includes a typical 12-month for design. And that's not in the building so much, other than bringing it up to code if it is a prototype, but it's site adaptation and coordination with the local building department, the state, the fire jurisdiction, et cetera, and community development. And then it's 12 months to construction. So typically, you would start design the spring after a bond passes, and you want to be constructed and tight by December, buttoned up. And then you're working on the interior, then you follow with the landscaping. So typically 3 summers after bond passes.
And is our philosophy still the same, to replicate our prototypes that we currently have, as opposed to starting from ground zero for the design stage?
We can do both. The feedback from school leadership and leaders currently is that our latest elementary prototype meets the needs. We've received lessons learned. It can be tweaked for the large number of staff that support students now, the breakout rooms, the intervention, and the like. In fact, in the next presentation, our cost estimates include more space with that prototype for either a PK5 or PK6.
And I know, Mr. Bingham, you were talking about the rabbits that we pull out. And I know at one time, Sterling Ranch talked about a unique rabbit of, we're building some community buildings already. District, might you be interested in using those temporarily for school purposes? Has that rabbit been discussed at all?
I think Derek is probably more appropriate to respond to that. There are a lot of code issues as far as school space not specifically constructed for school use. And then there are a lot of security issues as well with single entrance, secure perimeter, and a lot of the other issues that we've been able to, safe environments we've been able to provide for children. So sometimes that limits what we can accept as an offer, but I'll defer to Derek on that.
I concur with Shannon. The discussion has generally been of that flavor. Certainly there are creative solutions to it. I would like to point out that the main issue that we're here tonight with is in the primary system. And so when it gets back to those older kids, middle schoolers and high schoolers, while important, it's our younger kids that really those neighborhood schools, having them close to the neighborhood, that when you look at the capacities, those are the kinds of challenges that we want to meet, because that's the challenge in front of us. I will also say in our conversations with the LRPC, we have student representation from the SAG. And with the comments from the SAG representative was, you know, it's also a challenge at the high school level with the drive times. So kids in this area are still having to travel across the roads and the bridges and the traffic, and the drive times become significant. That's something that we had heard from our high school folks on the LRPC. And so while important, it's the primary level and the facilities for those primary students that is of immediate concern for us on the LRPC.
Which leads me to one more question, then I'll be glad to pass the mic to others. But given, Derek, that is our concern is mostly our primary kiddos. You know, this district has a history of using 4-track calendar quite successfully and really used it well during a boom time in our district when we did have to wait for new buildings to open up. And so I'm just wondering, has that conversation been had in terms of looking at that possibility?
Conversation is happening. And one of the reasons is before, when we did a polling of the community and both the developers and neighborhoods as they were coming up, one thing we heard from the neighborhood developers is it's not as attractive to sell homes with that kind of a model. But we're finding ourselves in a situation where we may have to pull out many tools in the toolbox to be able to accomplish that goal. And so our options, as growth happens, is becoming more and more limited to our, you know, the old saying is your preferences have constraints, but your constraints may not have preferences. And so as a result, that conversation is happening. It may be something we need to consider. That's the kind of insight that we would like the board to help us with from the long-range planning, but it is in that conversational piece.
Because really a 4-track system increases the capacity of those facilities, what, 25%? I mean, isn't that our typical estimate? So when we look at these numbers of when these buildings begin to become overcrowded, I'm just thinking that there's something to be considered. Because and this district has known how to do that well. Quite honestly, and our families have certainly seen us do that well. So.
One thing I might add to that, though, is that there are currently no year-round schools in Colorado. I'm not real sure I'm aware of very many in the western U.S. The Year-Round Education Association has been dismantled. They no longer have a website. And nationally, the environment for year-round education is weak, and we might be on the bleeding edge of reinstituting that.
And I just wanted to thank you for that question, because that's what we as the LRPC need to know, what the board direction is. What tools do you want us to investigate? Because the last thing we want to do is go ask the community and the parents, would you want to do 4-track and change the calendar system? Only to have the board say, what are you thinking? So trying to understand what direction you guys want to investigate, and then going out to the community to make thoughtful progress on this.
Absolutely, and I think some of it's in the presentation, because I think, Mr. Bingham, when we talk about year-round, people do kind of go, what do you mean by that? But when we say things like, it's 9 weeks on, 3 weeks off, that looks a lot different to a family to understand that it's not year-round, like 12 years or even 12 months. It really is a cycle that can be appealing if we, discuss it in the correct manner. But I appreciate your pushback in saying we may be on the front edge of reinstating that if we do that. So thank you for that.
It would be somewhat unusual to have, say, Roxborough and Coyote Creek on 4-track, and the schools a mile and a half down the road and then of course you have the issue of what happens with my middle schooler who's not on 4-track. And, but that's a complication, but it is a temporary, or it can be a permanent, but it could be a short-term solution in both Coyote Creek and Roxborough.
Okay, a big thank you to the Long Range Planning Committee. It's such a pleasure working with all of you. The countless hours and the dedication that you have is amazing. So thank you for being here tonight. I had, I guess, a couple of questions. One is around driving time and distance and what is standard across our district, like to give people context as to what a long bus transportation ride would be. Do we have that kind of data?
Yes, Director, thanks for the question. And Donna Grattino, our Director of Transportation, is here to correct me if I'm wrong, but our average ride time for a student on a general education bus is 35 minutes. So that's average, which means a student getting on the first stop of a long leg is going to have a longer ride. For a bus transporting students with special needs, it's 45 minutes is the standard.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I think it's extremely important for us to give context when we do go out. I'm the first to say, yes, let's engage families who are going to be impacted, but we need to give them context as well when we're engaging them. And I do think there's a multitude of options. People may not like all of the options, but there's a multitude of options. And year-round school is an option that we have used in the past. There's pros and cons to any option. I think being able to ask people for their input, but also giving them the cost associated with each of the options. And unfortunately, I have a lot of history in this district too, where we did a survey when we were on year-round school. And I remember we went out and we asked families, do you want to get off year-round schools? And overwhelmingly, well, I shouldn't say over, because I don't exactly remember, the majority said yes, but we didn't say at what cost. And they weren't willing to pass a local MLO and bond. So I think we need to explain, here are various options and here are the various costs associated and the pros and cons. And I truly believe that level of engagement will help us make the best decisions because we'll have the clearest feedback from our community.
I think one good example of that's mobiles. There are parents who are adamantly opposed to having their children educated in mobiles. My kids went to school in mobiles and got by, but they have disability issues, they have security issues. And so when you ask people questions about, are you willing to have mobiles, though, you get a lot of negative on that, in part because they haven't done it.
One of the questions I had for the committee is around the mix. I'm looking at 5 new elementaries, 1 new middle, 1 new high school, and you said the traditional mix there is around 2/3 of district operated or neighborhood schools and roughly around 1/3 of district authorized or charter schools. I'm wondering, in that mix, has K-6 versus K-8 been looked at, mixing up the grade levels, so possibly you could build an elementary that could cover a middle, things like that. And then also, as we go into the fall, and you said there's definitely going to be a mix of neighborhood and charters, what's the effect of something like a K through 12 charter coming in there, and what does that do to the whole plan?
Derek, can you show us that slide that's got the current?
What slide do you want?
We have a good example there because we've got STEM and Ben Franklin in that area. So we know to some extent how it looks. 1 back. No, 2 back.
Forward. There. No, next one.
Oh. 13 then, thank you.
Yeah, this is it.
So we have 2 K-12 charters in that area. We can approximate what the capture is. Generally, most of the charter schools in Douglas County are not K-12. And we have no idea what might come in there. I know that STEM has advertised in the Chatfield urban area to look at building a new school. So that gives you some idea what might happen. Again, you get bigger charter school numbers in the elementary and middle school. We've never done any polling on K-8s. I don't even know if we have. We have? Oh, yeah, we did that in the last round.
Yeah, I would point the board and members of the public to the SCUBA landing page. As you can see on school capacity and boundary, we did a survey back in the late 2019, early 2020, in which we asked the community, K-8s, are you in favor for it? While it wasn't polled negatively, it was the least appropriate for what the community thought. But what I mean by appropriate is, if you're already in K-8, like a charter, that's your preference. There's the middle school component that parents like. We have a mix of 7-8 configuration of middle school and 6-7-8 middle school that has also been addressed in way, shape, and form and would be coming more to the board later in what is our middle school vision. But when it gets back to the survey numbers, K-8s, district-run K-8s, polled very poorly in juxtaposition to all the other strategies that we had asked about. So when it gets back to the outcomes, one thing I can tell you from an enrollment standpoint is usually you get that K through 6, you get a lot of kids in there, but then they start petering out in the 7th and 8th grade configurations to move on to high school. So, you know, that middle school, and I would point to Mr. Windsor to put ornaments on the tree, so to speak, as a middle school principal. The programming, science rooms, athletics, band, all of those sort of things in a secondary model, very advantageous for kids and their outcome. So when it gets back to what we're looking at here, we have asked about K-8s. They didn't poll very well on our district-wide survey, but it's something in the toolbox that, again, much like year-round, we'd like insight, we'd like consideration. If we need to revisit the questions, we can certainly do that.
I'm going to add a little something here. I think it could be a potential question to take to this community, given the fact that there's a void of a junior high and a high school located in the Chatfield urban area. So those students from Roxborough and the south part of Sterling Ranch are going to have a significant drive time and commute to both junior high or middle school and high school. And so I think it could be valuable if the board directed to investigate what parents thought about those options.
I've been up to Sterling Ranch a couple times, even as a candidate, and since I've been a director. And one of the things I took away was what I have heard is there's a desire for some charters, but there's a little bit of fear that if the charter is super niche-y, what does that do to the neighborhood? And I think in your questioning and in your engagement, that should be part of it, not just the K-8, but you know, are you serving the neighborhood? And if we wind up with a highly specialized charter, which is not a bad thing, but what does that do to truly meet the needs of the community? And that would be a question. I have just 2 other questions. One I think is real simple. Is there any known potential improvements to the highway access roads other than the Waterton Road that was mentioned? Is there any other potential relief coming in that area that you're aware of?
At this point, no.
One thing we might add is that Waterton Road will eventually empty out at Sedalia. Now, whether or not they will add capacity to that intersection or not, but you will be able to exit Sterling Ranch to the southeast via Sedalia once it's complete.
Michelle lives in that area?
I had over a decade in Roxborough. So I will say that with time, in the future, there will be a time when it will be more efficient to drive up Wadsworth onto C470 and then drop into Thunder Ridge. And so that gives you a scope of that time commitment in a car with commute traffic. And it's a line of cars, buses, all waiting. It's not a small group of students that make this commute. There's roughly 100 students per grade level in the Roxborough schools. So alone, already existing before growth, you have roughly 600 students making a daily commute from the Roxborough area before you add in the Sterling Ranch and Solstice communities. So without better road systems and more efficiency on those road systems, and some people currently make that choice to drive up Wadsworth and around. And it's a tiny bit longer now, but it's close.
My last question is around, we're going to have a presentation in a little bit about mill bond potentials. If the bond is delayed, if there is a bond proposed this year and the bond's delayed, what I'm hearing from Director Ray's questions is we run, and comments by planning managers are, things get limited and the tools get fewer and the options get fewer. So I'm going to make the assumption that that's true. With each delay or non-passage, the tools become more blunt and less options are there. The one last thing I would ask you to take to the community is around that. What are your preferences, assuming that a bond is nominated and it's passed? And then what happens if that happens and it is not passed? Because there definitely needs to be discussion, not only what we would call happy path, but what happens if we get into delayed bonds, and what are some options that the community wants in that case?
For us to be able to provide back to you is some scenarios. If the bond issue moves quickly, here's the way we can deal with the interim time. If it's delayed, what does that mean for that community? And hopefully that'll give you some talking points as you're out visiting as well.
So one other quick question. What do we do with the schools that are declining enrollment? I'm sure that's not a question everyone loves, but just out of curiosity, if we do end up building schools, which clearly they're needed in the Sterling Ranch area, what happens to those schools that have declining enrollment?
And then you have the magnet effect. If we build a brand new shiny K-8 in Sterling Ranch in a choice environment, which there's no option that this will not remain that for the foreseeable future, what do we do with, we've got 3 elementary schools in that feeder system that are looking at 50% capacity in the next few years. So you look at, is it better to move kids to those schools rather than build the shiny new one? If we build a shiny new one, are kids going to leave those schools? That's a consideration you're going to have. And, the word is repurpose. The time may come that we have to find another use for those. We have plenty of other purposes we can use, but those are harder discussions. So yeah, that's part of what we have to do. We have to do that all over Highlands Ranch, to be honest with you.
One thing that you do need to consider is that from a standard level of public school service standpoint, the schools that we have are well placed and well deployed for children to have a reasonable passage to school. And when we start looking at doing things where we pull schools offline, keep in mind that the impacts on those child's passage to school in the morning is pretty significant, and when they come home. So, repurposing is the standard. There have been hundreds of schools closed nationally over the past 36 months, and quite a few in Colorado as well. So keep in mind that as we look at those things, the minimizing the impact on children, and even though we have areas that are depopulating and housing that is aging, we have other areas in these capital facility voids that are growing. And the need for school facilities that are local in Canyons, Ridgegate, Crystal Valley, Montaigne, and Solstice Sterling Ranch are profound. And if we don't build schools in there, we're looking at a completely different level of service for those neighborhoods that differs from what the rest of the district enjoys.
So I was going to lead off and say, absolutely, I think we need to start getting out and talking to our public and providing them. I mean, I hear really three viable scenarios from mobile overflow busing and 4-track calendar would be, three that I would think are pretty viable considerations. I'm really concerned, and Mr. Bingham, I know you said the sales offices are doing a nice job at communicating to their potential new people coming in, but certainly we had a situation where we had a charter school come in and say they were advertised as the new neighborhood school. And so I think because of that, we have a lot of work to do to kind of walk that back a little bit to say, we're still in the exploration stage to see what's going to be best for this community. But I think we would all agree that it's time for us to aggressively present and talk to those folks about some options and considerations. So that would be the one thing I would highly recommend.
So what I'm hearing, and obviously we'd like direct, but that the board considers it to be time to start looking at broader solutions in the Chatfield urban area, to not just focus on 9C and 9D, but to start talking to people both in that area and some of those in Northwest Highlands Ranch about longer term, bigger issues. Okay.
In addition to what Director Ray offered, all those tools, I heard him mention it earlier. I don't know if tenant finish is even an option in there, but it's a tool that you've listed, and it may be one that we still can wield at this time. So maybe that as well. But I totally agree. I think we've got some consensus here on the board that the direction is to engage the community. Obviously, the LRPC are the experts on here. The only final ask I would have as the president is come back to the board if you need support in the engagement, if you want board members to participate in the engagement, if you need to hear a unified voice from the board, various members to get out there and support that engagement. I think that appears to be something that we're all very interested in doing.
I think we could realistically come back to the board with a plan for outreach, a more specific plan. April? Probably by your April meeting. We meet next week. No, excuse me, they met last week. I was out of town. We meet the first part of March, and then we would come back as soon as we can after that to talk to you about a detailed plan. Honestly, I don't know that we can wait much longer.
Should we separate the 9C, 9D from the outreach so we can be more efficient with 9C and 9D, or is there time to implement both at the same time?
That's a great question, if I may. We need to do both.
Okay.
I agree.
I would just encourage, I've been on the LRPC for about 1.5 years now, so I'm kind of the newbie, but Shannon does a fantastic job with the outreach. And if you can ever sit in on listening to the parents, or I've been to one where it's been all staff of a school when we were talking about redistricting down in Castle Rock. So the information that you get from listening to those, I would highly encourage. I don't know if we're going to still be doing them virtual or if we're going to be doing them in person soon, but I would encourage any of the board members to come and sit in on those.
And I've had the opportunity both in person and virtual with Shannon when he was working with Littleton. You will get questions, everything from how are we going to do this for the next 5 years to how is my kid going to get to that school and how come he doesn't go to the same school as the kid on the street over. So you learn everything you possibly can. Everybody's cared about their kid.
And sidewalk.
And sidewalks. Will there be sidewalks? Yeah, how do you
cross the street? What does the walkway look like? Those people, and as we learned when we went into, they hate tunnels. But as we did when we went into Parker and did some of that stuff, we thought we had a good plan. One of the neighborhoods came in and told us we were very, very wrong. We have to, again, if you don't listen to the people, you've got a problem on that kind of stuff.
And directors, if I may, so if the LRPC and Western Demographics take two paths, one urgent, one medium term, if for consideration there was going to be a boundary change effective August of 2022, so the LRPC would bring results of the outreach no later than April to the board, and that impacts the site-based budgeting process. We've done that before, but that could be a very fast track on a couple of scenarios, separate and parallel to the midterm solution. So the LRPC may be coming back with a recommendation to proceed with community outreach on those urgent scenarios very soon.
So one more quick question. Are the developers willing to work with us on the outreach as well? New homeowners who have potentially purchased, are we able to tap into those individuals?
I think we've gotten a lot of constructive participation, especially in Solstice with Shea Homes. And the other builders throughout Sterling Ranch have been incredibly constructive and helpful. So I think it'll be a team effort. We've had builder roundtables where we had 4 of those in a row, where it was just tailored to the builders and their sales and supervisory staffs. And they were all incredibly constructive. What do we have to do to help? What do we have to do to help you? So I think we would get that kind of cooperation again.
And more so the new homeowners than the actual developers, right? Those individuals that have invested already and are waiting for that new house, are we able to get feedback from them? I think that would be really critical.
Great.
Okay, thank you to the LRPC. I think that was an excellent presentation.
And I want to thank you for the time. I know you have lots on your agenda, but it's really helpful for us to get some of your thoughts to put into our mixing bowl and pull out the right rabbit when we get to that point. So thank you for your time tonight. We'll be back again.
I will just quickly apologize. Mr. Bingham, I was referring to you as Sean, and it's Shannon. It was an S name, so my apologies.
Okay, we'll have a 10-minute recess. It is time 6, we'll call it 15. We will start up again at time 25 with the next presentation. Thank you. session item number 5, 21-22 Master Capital Plan and Priority Capital Needs. Mr. Cosgrove.
Good evening, directors, staff, community. If we could show the first slide, thank you very much. So first of all, even though the Long-Range Planning Committee has left, I do want to thank them immensely. They are so committed, hardworking volunteers. Their continual process improvement on the Master Capital Plan has been significant. And at this point, I'd like to reintroduce the board and our community to the last Master Capital Plan that was published, the 21-22 Master Capital Plan. This basically summarizes all of the capital needs of the district. And for a large physical plant owner like we are of over 7 million square feet, it is not unusual to have these amounts. So basically, the Master Capital Plan includes data and information regarding all of our needs for neighborhood, magnet, alternative, charter schools, and support facilities. Last year, when the Master Capital Plan was submitted in October, that was based on information from January, and the needs were up to $847 million. Again, that is not unusual to have $1 billion backlog when you have 7 million square feet. The average age of our schools are over 20 years old, typically on the 15-year life cycle. There are needs that have to be addressed, and we all understand that as homeowners. Of that, approximately $423 million is for new construction, identified in the Master Capital Plan. Up to $198 million is for reinvestment. That is repairing items that are there typically by replacement. So repair by replacement, that's an industry standard term for reinvestment or renewal. We had $50 million identified for safety and security, $33 million for transportation needs. And keep in mind, we have over 300 buses, and they're all aging over 200,000 miles, so there's significant needs. $32 million for information technology, and you'll see this later on in the presentation, but just the annual cost of computer refresh when on any given day we have over 100,000 devices on in our schools. That's a large investment in our technology. We have identified up to $11 million for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and it's not discretionary furniture. Many of our schools have the original furniture to when the school was open, so think how much they're used. And if you were in your house, would you still be in that situation? We are, out of necessity, and it's working. It's all safe and healthy, but it is significantly aged. We had mobiles, and that came up at the last presentation. We have over 120 mobiles that we use for educational purposes. And the average age is over 25 years. And when we move them based on the bubble of enrollment, to the earlier point, we do have to take apart, reinstall, get permitted, and because permitting is needed, you have professional liability, you have engineers, you have contractors, and it costs money. So we have a significant mobile inventory that we need to continue to address. And we have playground equipment. Playground equipment is a safety issue, and any preschool playground is also a licensure issue. So sometimes that gets costly with the risk management involved with those, as well as we have $1 million identified in contingency. That's set aside placeholder funds typically for ADA and special education retrofits to schools, modifications that need to be done. And we had $5 to $7 million identified for just the tier ones for charter schools. That just puts it in the perspective. Now, this presentation is slightly different. It is a subset of the Master Capital Plan with additional needs. So the 21-22 Master Capital Plan was based on the 2020 Capital Improvement Plan. And I'll highlight what the CIP, Capital Improvement Plan, is in a minute. The current priority needs are based on that Master Capital Plan, plus additional programming requirements that have been identified since January of last year, plus the updated 2021 Capital Improvement Plan. And for considerations from the Mill Bond Exploratory Committee, if we're going to be discussing a next bond, we look at the life cycle, and we actually extrapolated the Capital Improvement Plan out one more year to 2027. So our overall needs, if you encompassed all of them, are about $1 billion. I'm not going to be discussing $1 billion. I'm only discussing the priority needs of the district for consideration by the MBEC. Before I proceed too, I want to remind the community of our tiering and prioritization process. We have line items of projects in the CIP, Capital Improvement Plan, thousands of projects. They are tiered in 4 tiers. Tier 1 would basically impact the operational and occupancy of a school, typically the roofing, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, elevators, infrastructure. If something happened to one of those components, you would close the school. Tier 2 is the building envelope, exterior finishes, flooring, plumbing, fixtures, minor mechanical equipment, playgrounds, paving, parking lots, for example. That's Tier 2. With differential settlement over 300 freeze-thaw cycles in Colorado, it is significant if you get degradation of the parking lot. Artificial fields will affect, at high schools and stadiums, will affect programming and athletic events and organized sports. That's a Tier 2. Tier 3 are interior wall and ceiling finishes, casework, fixtures, furnitures, equipment, and irrigated turf fields at our playgrounds, for example. And then Tier 4 is landscaping, exterior structures like athletic booths and such, and miscellaneous site work, like retaining walls. A retaining wall is not a big deal unless it's failing, and that becomes a safety issue. And then we prioritize the components, literally on a scale of 1 to 8,000. All of this is in the master capital plan, and the priority takes into account the cause, the type of impact, risk, urgency, and extent of impact. So if you look at a Tier 1 high, that's the most urgent need. If you look at a Tier 2 high, that could be more important than a Tier 1 low priority because of the failure is imminent. So I just wanted to remind everyone in the tier and priority discussions. Thanks to the Long-Range Planning Committee and Western Demographics and Derek Sturts, we have already discussed some of these areas, and I just want to elaborate. So the areas that I'm going to discuss now, they have been included in the Master Capital Plan, and these are areas where new growth is needed, where boundary adjustments cannot solve for the capacity needs. There are 4 areas where schools will be needed. One is the Canyons / Castle Pines. This is located just on the east side of I-25 at Hess. The overall plan development is zoned for 5,000 homes and will eventually result in 4,000 additional students. We'll need 2 elementary schools, 1 new middle school, and 1 high school just in the Canyons. Buffalo Ridge and Timber Trail Elementary in Castle Pines are forecasted to be over capacity in 5 years. Specifically, 128% capacity at Buffalo Ridge and 113% at Timber Trail. There are no other schools in Castle Pines that can absorb this growth. So we have a placeholder for a new school in that plan development. We would forecast a PK5 because that feeder has 6 through 8 at Rocky Heights Middle School. And so hence a PK5, not a PK6. Crystal Valley, it was mentioned in the last presentation. It's located on the southern portion of Castle Rock. Within the Crystal Valley development and other development in Castle Rock, approximately 3,000 new homes and 1,000 more elementary students will be here in 5 years. The elementary schools in Castle Rock have been absorbing this growth for quite some time. We've had multiple boundary adjustments, and 4 of those elementary schools are projected to be over program capacity in 5 years. Castle Rock will be at 109%, that's Castle Rock Elementary. Flagstone at 120%, Rock Ridge at 137%, and South Ridge at 116%. And this is after the board approved moving 6th grade out of South Ridge and Sage Canyon to Mesa Middle School several years ago. Sterling Ranch. As just briefed by Western Demographics and the Long Range Planning Committee, the future high school feeder will eventually have over 9,000 students. And that's just not Sterling Ranch. That's Solstice and the undeveloped agricultural area yet. We'll need 3 new elementary schools just in Sterling Ranch. So while the rebounding strategies helped to date and will help, we do need increased capacity at Sterling Ranch to provide access for that community. Mesa Middle School expansion. Recall 3 of our 9 high school feeders have 6 through 8 in the middle school, Rocky Heights Middle School, Cimarron, and Sagewood. and the others have grades 7 and 8. So in addition to the overcrowding forecasted because of the growth at Castle Rock Elementary, Flagstone, Rock Ridge, and South Ridge, the growth in Crystal Valley and other areas of Castle Rock are also going to start to impact Sage Canyon at beyond the 5 years. In fact, Mesa Middle School will be approaching 95% capacity as is in 5 years. So we have significant growth. And so in addition to a school in Mesa Middle School, we will need an addition to the middle school itself. So I just want to highlight these are needs that are purely from capacity. With that said, in addition to Mesa Middle School, would also support the vision of 6 through 8 versus 7 and 8 to enhance programming. Regarding the Chaparral High School feeder, additional capacity is needed in the next 5 years in several ways. We either need a new elementary school on the Sierra Ridge dedicated school site, or in addition to, or rebuild Sierra Middle School to house the 6th grade in the feeder. And if I may just highlight some numbers. In 5 years, 4 of the 5 elementary schools in that feeder will be over capacity. Prairie Crossing being the worst at 153% in 5 years. And the 5th school, Pine Lane, isn't far behind. It won't be over capacity, but it'll be at 95% capacity with little room for additional students. If the feeder to remain a PK6 feeder into a 7 and 8 middle school, then Sierra Ridge Elementary School would be needed. If we want to migrate 6th grade into the middle school in that feeder as well, we have 2 options, either an addition or a new school. And it is a significant addition. And all these costs we've vetted through our architects. So we have several options there, but these are the areas of void that the Long-Range Planning Committee and consultant mentioned that this capacity needs to be provided. Otherwise, we're going to be in significant overutilized schools and overcrowded schools in 5 years. Besides the new construction for typical grade level capacity, additional programming that is forthcoming will also require additional space. It's a great segue from last presentation because the first 3 options could be achieved by using underutilized schools or a portion thereof instead of more expensive costs with new construction. So special education K-8 school, the master capital plan has for many years included the need for a school to assist students with special needs at the K-8 level, similar to how Plum Creek Academy addresses those needs for high school students to intervene and quickly reintegrate those students back to the typical classroom. The space for this is much smaller than even one of our older elementary schools. Plum Creek Academy is only 19,000 square feet. One of our older elementary schools is 52,000. So this is roughly a third of the space in one of our elementary schools. Alternative education. There's no alternative education available in West Highlands Ranch. We have alternative education in Lone Tree with Eagle Academy, in Castle Rock with DC Oaks, and could soon have alternative education in Parker at the ACC building in Parker adjacent to Chaparral High School. But there's no offering in West Highlands Ranch. Again, this could be something we could pursue in one of our existing schools. And Cloverleaf Enrichment School. Cloverleaf Enrichment represents a partnership between family, school, and the community. Cloverleaf supports and enriches home education. It's a K-12 school with mostly K-6 students currently enrolled. These students are in school 1 day a week and at home 4 days a week. The school currently has 300 students, but the demand is larger, and if space were provided, we believe 500 seats could be filled immediately with Cloverleaf. Again, this space could be provided in one of our schools. The school also is currently located in 2 less than ideal locations, one of those being leased space at an annual cost to the district. There's Legacy Innovation Campus, formerly CU South. Understand it hasn't been named yet. That's one of the names we refer to it as staff. Thanks to the board's previous approval, phase 1 for 49,000 square feet is funded with the remaining funds from the 2018 bond, premium interest and cash in lieu. To tenant finish phase 2 space, that's an additional 10,000 square feet And phase 3 is an additional 28,000 square feet. Additional funds would be needed. And if I may elaborate, phase 2 is tenant finishing high base space that's pretty expensive, 2-story space with significant equipment for construction, HVAC, welding, and advanced manufacturing programs. And the partnerships are still being finalized for that. Phase 3 is additional space for uses to be determined at the direction of the board with collaboration with the community and partners. And there's CTE, Career and Technical Education, that continues to grow, that was mentioned in the last presentation. Thanks to the voters in the 2018 bond, we upgraded significantly CTE at our 9 high schools. However, we continue to have needs. For one, an automotive CTE program is needed in the Highlands Ranch area. There's nothing to that effect in that area now. And a few CTE programs are still needed at our high schools that were desired in the 2018 bond, but those were above the funding level. For CTE equipment, in the 2018 bond, we included and spent $1 million in equipment to support CTE at our high schools, and we anticipate more equipment would be needed. This is simply a placeholder for that equipment, for that programming. ACC Collaborative Campus in Castle Rock. There's the Sturm campus with ACC. It's extremely successful. There's been preliminary discussions with ACC for phase 2, and these costs reflect simply what the district share may be. The low end is 10,000 square feet, the high end is 20,000 square feet on some future phase 2 campus on that site. Preschool was mentioned at the last presentation. To support future preschool programming, additional classrooms are anticipated. We don't know what that demand will be, but we're being proactive by including this as a potential priority funding need. The least costly option, and this is a frugal option, it's to purchase new mobile classrooms, provide 2 mobiles, that's 2 classrooms per mobile, in 6 high school feeders, locate the typical grade level classes in the mobiles and the preschool classrooms within the buildings, and get the Department of Human Services licensure for those preschool programs. It does not include 3 feeders, that's Highlands Ranch, Thunder Ridge, and Mountain Vista, where we have capacity available, and we could find that capacity within those existing schools. The other option is to build additions. This approach is more expensive and actually would result in fewer classrooms unless we really increase the costs. This plan includes 1 preschool addition in 6 high school feeders, so 6 additional preschool rooms. Again, it does not include the Highlands Ranch, Thunder Ridge, and Mountain Vista feeder because of the existing capacity currently and forecasted in those feeders. Preschool playgrounds. Any new preschool classroom would ideally be located at an elementary school that already has a preschool program. Preschool playgrounds are not the same as typical playgrounds. Their equipment is different, it's sized differently, it's licensed, even down to the fence and the percent shade structure for Department of Human Services licensure of a preschool program. We need playgrounds to have a licensure for a preschool program, so we've included these costs. We've included the cost for 3 playgrounds as a placeholder, if needed. Standardization of amenities. So we know not all schools are built and created equal, and we do have some differences. Not all schools have the same LED lighting, entrance appearances, the entrance face, the facelift of a school could be considered. Athletic amenities, they do not have all the same athletic amenities. Auditorium upgrades, they don't have the same level of auditorium equipment. It has been very different on when those auditorium seats were upgraded, if at all. So it's not just athletics, but it's all activities. The intercom systems are not the same capacity in our schools. So this is what we're talking about, standardization of amenities. The capital improvement plan, as I mentioned earlier, projects when items need to be replaced. And again, it's for all schools, neighborhood, magnet, alternative charter, and support facilities, just like Wilcox. Several years ago, we replaced the roof, the rooftop unit. We have needs in this building just like we do in our schools. Charter schools did submit and have submitted every year their needs in the master capital plan. And several weeks ago, Derek Sturtz and I met with all of the charter schools and Gordon Mosier, and they are validating their capital needs for consideration. The cost I have included is what they have previously submitted as part of their master capital plan. For reference, during the 2018 bond, all schools built in 2006 or older were included in the bond based on life cycle. Similarly, we forecast the next set of schools based on the age and the typical replacement of building components on the 15-year cycle. So we're targeting 2011 or older. However, these years and that in the eventual plan could flux depending on the final funding amount and what our budget limitations are. Tier 1 and Tier 2, for comparison purposes, the 2018 bond included $144 million for Tier 1 and 50% by funding of Tier 2. That was only in the next 4 years, and it was at schools 2006 or older. And pending market conditions with the supply chain and inflation, we believe the $100 million to $140 million range will cover the most urgent needs to ensure our buildings remain safe and code compliant. And like the 2018 bond, only a portion of the Tier 2 needs could be addressed. It was a shame in the 2018 bond we didn't have enough money for parking lots. And we didn't touch parking lots because that was not a priority at the time. It would be nice to have that, but these are only the most urgent. And we would face the same limitations with this funding amount. Otherwise, it would be significantly more. I would not recommend taking any less funding for Tier 1 and Tier 2 for any of these needs. This is based on their life cycle. If a component is not in this plan and it fails, just like in the 2018 bond, we will fix it. We will find funds. All of our schools will always be 100% safe and code compliant. But what we would have to do, we would have to use bond contingency or use funds from other projects that come in below budget. And they do sometimes because components may not need to be repaired once design started and those requirements are vetted by the design team and the contracting community. And just to put it in perspective, $100 million, we believe, could get us the next 3 years in Tier 1 and partial 3 years in Tier 2. And only safety-related Tier 3 or 4, very few. I would say less than a handful of Tier 3 and 4 projects. $140 million, we think preliminary could get us 4 years Tier 1 and 2 to 3 years partial Tier 2. And again, very few Tier 3 and 4. So we are being good stewards and only looking at what is needed in the next 4 years. Estimated costs for charter schools needs are based on the input from the charter schools. Typically, they have a design team or an architect that help them with their cost estimates, and we vet those. And I want to mention here that 2018 bond including Tier 1 urgent needs for charters that were allowed by law. Our bond council vetted what we could do in charter schools, what we could not do because the district doesn't own that property. And typically, we can replace equipment, but we can't replace components of the building like a roof or carpet. We could do mechanical rooftop units, but not the roof. We could do IT security and certain fixtures, but not the painting and actually the building envelope itself. We've identified the range of costs for security information technology. We do have Paul Kleinens, our security systems specialist here. We don't discuss specifics with our security needs, but this is consistent with our ongoing capital refresh for security infrastructure, just like it was in the 2018 bond. There are 3 priorities. These, in general, affect the entire district. There are needs at schools, but many of these systems are central-based that do monitor and control our security district-wide. Information technology. We have Mark Blair, our Chief Technology Officer, in case there are questions, but this includes device refresh. $22 million is to replace all of the devices for all students and staff in the next 5 years. That's the bulk of it. We have access points, wireless controllers, Cisco network appliance and servers. There's an additional $2.7 million in priority 2 and 3 that's not shown here, which would need to be either included in a future funding question or rolled over to the general fund, as in the past was done to certain levels. These are for router infrastructure, storage, firewall, battery backup, switch hardware, phones, and IT vehicles as well for maintenance. For transportation, bus purchases are absolutely needed if we're to provide transportation in the next 4 years. We would have serious concerns if this couldn't happen due to the age and condition of our bus fleet. In addition, as we lose more bus mechanics, which we are, the ability to service and maintain our buses is now, instead of 2 shifts, we're on 1 shift. And vehicles that are aged, it's increasingly difficult to repair and make roadworthy. I just want to give some numbers on transportation. There are 169 general education buses, 120 special education buses. We currently have 26 out of service that need to go to auction. On any given day, there's typically 54 buses that are out of service. Every day, either due to maintenance, repairs, or annual inspections performed by our maintenance staff. This does not include any buses involved in an accident that need to be inspected. In the 2020-21 school year, as part of the 2018 bond, we purchased a total of 52 buses. That was a blessing, because in 2019, we auctioned and sold 44 buses, and in 2021, we auctioned and sold 41 buses. So we disposed of 82 buses and purchased 52 to replace that. We're fine. We have enough buses to perform all of our routes. In fact, we know drivers is the limiting factor in having sufficient driver pool. It's not the buses, but those buses that we have, they typically have over 200,000 miles. They have over 15 years, and these are hard miles. Lots of starts and stops, very hard miles. And all of the purchases that we've identified in the transportation estimate here, all of it's to replace current age fleet. None of it's for future growth, except for preschool. We have budgeted some for preschool needs. And so I'll be happy to answer any questions about the specifics, but it's basically cost per bus and different types of bus to give us the max flexibility possible. We have many different kinds of buses in addition to just the 77 passenger bus. And then the last slide. These are programmatic placeholders. I apologize, there's a spacing issue on one of those columns. Every year we do react to Americans with Disability Act improvements that we need to make to our schools based on an occupant or a visitor. That's typically egress, door hardware, counter, toilet fixture locations, etc. Special education, we have similar upgrades that we need to perform in our schools. Just one code compliant common room last year was $45,000. Why? It's not just the gyp wall, but you're affecting the fire alarm, the HVAC, the door hardware, the way the door swings. It has to swing out. Sometimes you're modifying the hallway to make that door swing. And what that means, it needs to be permitted. What that means, it needs to be designed. And so it does cost. Athletics. An artificial turf field in Douglas County with the UVs typically will last 11 years. After that, the UV degrades the ability of the rubber to be held within the artificial turf. The seams will start degrading, and it will soon become a safety issue. Tracks continue to need to be resurfaced every so often. Fortunately, with the 2018 bond and the voters, we replaced our last tennis court from asphalt to post-tension concrete. So we're good there, but they do need resurfacing periodically. Playground equipment. This is an estimate to repair playground components that rust, get vandalized, or break. And mobile classrooms. We have not replaced a single mobile that I know of since we've purchased it as a district, ever. and the average age is over 25 years. And at some point, we're going to have to start either upgrading or replacing mobiles. We can dispose mobiles that are no longer needed. It's at a significant cost. We have not disposed of any yet because, as the earlier presentation said, an empty mobile is going to be used for many reasons, and it should be used. So we have mobile classrooms as a need. District initiatives. This can be anything from signs for the bond. When we have a project, it can be mobile copier units. It can be the support fleet vehicles for various departments. There's lots of needs here. It could be for architectural analysis on options. So this is basically contingency for the district to flex to needs. Of course, all subject, in this case, to the MBOC, but future could be the MBAC followed by an MBOC, for example, with that oversight. Contingency. In this bond, we had $15 million in contingency funded by bond premium. Whether the funding is from bond, premium, interest, we need contingency just in case. With the amount of new construction needed, if something happens to the market and we have a cost increase, we would rely heavily on that contingency. Bond management. We spent approximately $5 million in this bond for an owner's rep and software to help us manage the bond. We're estimating $8 to $9 million. We would pursue this in multiple ways. We would advertise for full-time employee equivalent staff to manage the bond with construction, accounting specialist, and purchasing. We would also hire for an owner's rep and see what kind of responses we get to the advertisement. We could even do a hybrid, for example, but we do need help performing a bond. We only have 2 project managers in the district of 7 million square feet. We have 1 accounting specialist. We have 1 facilities capital planner and 1 long-range planner. So we would need help, and these would be bond-funded temporary positions or a consultant owner's rep helping. Bond fees. I know our CFO, Kate Kataska, could answer any questions on this, but there is a fee to sell the bonds. And then project management software. This software is needed not only to manage and track projects, but also to interface with Workday, interface with procurement. We can't just use Excel spreadsheets to manage millions and millions of dollars. We had a software, this bond. However, that was part of the owner's rep contract, so we're no longer going to have that software. So this, ideally, is to purchase software for perpetuity, whether we have in-house staff or a consultant managing it, and even have it available after the bond. So this is a summary of our priority capital needs, and depending on the MBEC process and the feedback and what amount a bond ask would be, these costs would obviously have to change and meet those constraints. And we certainly look forward to doing that. And I hope that answers any questions you may have. If not, I'm happy to answer any questions. And we have Kay Kataski, our CFO. We have Wayne Blazik, our facilities capital planner. Donna Grattino, Director of Transportation. Paul Kleinen, Security Safety Specialist. And Mark Blair, Information Technology. So thank you very much.
Sure, I'll go first. One of the things that I really appreciate is the master capital plan is it's big, but for something this large, it's easily consumed. So thank you for the master capital plan. One of the things that I comment on is I think there was, personally, I've heard some input about confusion about the bond. I thought we were doing tier 1 stuff. I thought we were doing priority stuff. And maybe, in fact, on page, on page 19, there's this wonderful listing right here, the legend, that combines the tiers and priorities together. And I think this is the most clear combination that I've seen. So when communicating these to the public, to taxpayers, maybe always including them, we have X number of tier 1 high priorities, X number of tier 1 mediums, tier lows, so people don't get confused about what's a tier and what's a priority. So just a comment. One question I have about the tiers and priorities is I'm reading the description of the tiers, and I see that both security and transportation, because the tiers are defined by building material conditions and necessities, they're tier 3s. And while I understand we want to go for or look at what is the absolute minimum, I would personally consider some of those security initiatives and transportation issues, even though they are tier 3s, something that the district really needs. So maybe some consideration by the group on cherry picking a couple of those key transportation or security initiatives, which are going to sound like they're not a priority, but they really are for the district, and pull some tier 3s forward in the analysis as well.
That's a very good comment, Director, so thanks, because internally as staff, we've had that discussion. We've even toyed with the idea for central staff needs, IT security, transportation in particular, not to use the word tier, because most of their components affect the entire district. So the impact is significantly larger. So we can certainly appreciate that and be very clear. And again, I want to say, staff, we are very excited that there is an MBEC that is created, because in the 2018 bond, the MBOC was not created at the first of the bond. And so we've had multiple discussions, and thanks to the Long-Range Planning Committee and to the MBOC for the improvement in the Master Capital Plan, because it differentiates more and more, even with the flow chart, on what the difference is between the two. So I do want to thank them.
One other comment, and it's around the overall bond process. We want 12 years without a bond. And so similar to the discussion with the LRPC, when you go 12 years without passing a bond, all these options become emergent things. And my perception of the bond that was just passed is we had 12 years worth of deferred maintenance. We had to do tier 1s. We had to do tier 2s. We didn't have discretion that we may need. So as we go forward, not only do I think we should look at discussion of, and this will be coming in the next presentation, potentially, and Beck, what do we need now? I think what we really might need as a district is not just to look at the next bond. The big question I have in strategy is, how do we get back to normalization of the bond cycle and the bond process? Because we don't want to do 10-year giant leaps. We want to have periodic, scheduled, maybe smaller targeted bonds, so we can do those things, earn the trust of taxpayers, show them the ROI on the money they did, and then move to the next series. But I think this district particularly needs to get back to a normalized bond cycle, and that will work both ways. Trust of the taxpayer, they'll pass the next one. Trust of the taxpayer, they'll pass the next one. So I ask that we also consider that in the planning.
Thank you.
Rich, could you talk a little bit about the difference between Master Capital Plan and Capital Improvement Plan? Because I know there's some confusion. There's some assumptions MCP basically is our bond package. And so if you would just do a little bit of discussion about that, please.
Thank you. That's a very in-depth discussion. And again, thanks to the Long Range Planning Committee, I think, and I know we made significant headway. So there's the Capital Improvement Plan, CIP. That is the identification of all the capital renewal portion of the Master Capital Plan. The Master Capital Plan also includes new growth and new construction, which is not in the CIP. So the CIP is only fixing stuff that's there now. So the MCP also has new construction, it has enrollment, it also includes programming. So when you need space that's not for capacity but for programming, that's a third criteria that's included in the Master Capital Plan. And then there's the bond plan. So the bond plan uses the capital improvement plan and the Master Capital Plan to identify the needs. The active discussion every year is, since the Master Capital Plan is only published once a year, then any discussions that have taken place after that that are included in the bond plan is not codified yet in the Master Capital Plan. And so that needs to be very actively communicated with the public. Here's what we're adding and why, and what the difference is. In the 2018 bond, for example, we only had enough funds to address Tier 1 needs in 4 years. The Master Capital Plan is a 5-year document. So there's lots of room for overlap, but the CIP, Capital Improvement Plan, is the basis for the Master Capital Plan and the bond. And the CIP used for the bond is typically 1 year more recent than what was in the Master Capital Plan, because we update the Capital Improvement Plan every year. It's actually a dynamic, never static plan.
Is the CIP posted somewhere for public transparency, or is that just an internal document, like you said, because it's continually updated?
So it's internal, and the snapshot is included in the master capital plan. That's the line drawn in the sand. We cut it off and we publish it. The capital improvement plan goes 25 years out, at least. Sometimes 40-year life replacement cycle on some of our underground utility systems. So in theory, the capital improvement plan is a 40-year plan. So we truncate it at 5 years and publish it.
So in terms of our middle school concept, and let's see, Mr. Windsor over there, how many, if we were to move forward with some of the moving of sixth grade to a middle school concept, how many 7-8 combinations would we have left behind after we were to do this kind of an improvement plan? Is there?
So we would have 4 that would be in the 6-8 model if Sierra was to move forward, and then the remaining would be the 7-8.
And I know, Danny, for years, we've had conversation about really wanting to really have some discussion around programming about 6 through 8, with that being different than 7-8, and really maybe taking a position in our system that says, we believe 6 through 8 is what's best based on our research, based on knowing that we can develop more school culture, for instance, in a 6 through 8 than a 7-8. I'm just wondering too, is there some concurrent work to reactivate that study that we did several years ago to really say too, that we really believe 6 through 8 is the appropriate model? And I say that wincing because I love having 6th graders in the elementary level, but I think we also have a parallel programming work to do with messaging out to our community why we're making that shift and why a 6 through 8 model may be superior to a 7-8 model. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the conversation, we actually engaged in that conversation pretty at length, actually, with our LRPC this past year. In particular, one, there's the idea of preference in some of the research, and then there's also the ability to financially do it. And so I think part of the conversation is, one, fundamentally, is are there benefits of a 6-8 model? Are there benefits of a PK through 6 model? What does that look like in particular? Really defining what do we want the student experience to look like for our middle school students. Obviously, I have my biases that are there around a 6-8 model in the sense of what you're able to do around articulation, in the sense of what that looks like. However, what we want to be strategic in the sense of that conversation. What we don't want to do is open a conversation around a 6-8, knowing that if we were not able to financially do that, but also have consistency. I think as we're engaging a lot of our work specifically around the literacy work that we've been doing, I think in particular math-based work, we really want to make sure there's some consistency as we engage in that true PLC-based work, articulation, literacy-based goals, and that can look different in a PK5 model, PK6 model, 6 through 8, 7-8 model as well too, in relationship, not only around resources, but around articulating some goals, because your format and structures look and can look differently. And so as we've tried to strategically enter that work, I think it is definitely thinking about the student experience and at the same time engaging a conversation where we couldn't financially provide it. We want to be real mindful around what that is. Internally, it is something we've had some regular conversations, and I'll hand it over to Danelle and some of the conversations we've had as well.
So it's such an important conversation, not only with our middle level leaders and community, but also our elementary, because of the impact that it will have on elementary programming as well. And so there's a lot of complexity to that. As Danny said, we did engage in some of those conversations just a few months ago. It is a desire to pick those conversations back up so that we can really identify what is our vision for middle level and simultaneously elementary programming in the district. And what does that look like?
One other one that I was just looking at, when we look at some of the priorities for new construction or options, Mesa Middle School, Sierra Middle School expansions, and then we look at the tiers and priorities that are listed in here, do some of those go away or lessen if we pick the expansion option? Do we kind of get some 2-for-1 savings in those programs?
So we have already included the Tier 1 and Tier 2, 3 and 4 needs for Sierra Middle School and Mesa Middle School, for example. So those would still be there if we provided an addition. But the addition is significantly less costly than a new middle school.
Rich, for the LRPC, I don't think they've actually run models, though, to say 6 through 8 would look like, here's the impact if we move to a 6 through 8. I don't think there are models yet on that.
They have looked at models, and staff, Derek Sturts and I have looked at models for the capacity relief that the additions would provide. And the Mesa Middle School additional capacity is needed in addition to Crystal Valley Elementary School. So from a capacity perspective, we've looked at that. And in Sierra Ridge or Sierra Middle School, one or the other is needed, but not both. So they've analyzed through our utilization of schools the effect on capacity, but programming we defer to leadership.
But have we done that for the whole system or just where we have issues, capacity issues? I guess I'm wondering if we've looked at it for the whole system, if it changed.
So I'm going to jump in, Matt Reynolds. I know there's some research that was done by Hanover in some of this work. Matt, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. In 2017-18, at the behest of Rich and colleagues, we asked Hanover to do a lit review of the latest and greatest that was out there regarding grade configurations and the impact on student learning. It's been several years, so if we were going to, involve that, we would probably have to go back and do another research just as quickly as these things change. And some of the things that they discovered in there, it's less about the grade configuration and more about the programming. But again, that's from 2017-18. We'd probably have to engage in a more lengthy conversation.
I think the facet I'd also add in that is it's not only as far as the bond configuration, some of the capacity side, but it's also the ability to operationalize it. And I think from a middle school model in relationship to our elementary models, there are some dynamics around the operationalizing of that 6 through 8 model, in particular around what elective-based programming, core-based programming looks like within our middle school model, specifically 6 through 8.
And Director, I hope this answers your question, but we have looked at, through the school capacity boundary analysis, the option of migrating 6th grade at middle schools, and the decision and the community process would be, do you prioritize an underutilized middle school or several underutilized elementary schools in order to provide viable enrollment and capacity at those schools? So those, no doubt, will be part of the Long-Range Planning Committee's long-range look at, in particular, the Highlands Ranch area with the aging population. And that discussion could apply also in Castle Rock. So for the viability of schools, do you shift 6th grade to the middle school and repurpose an elementary school? Or do you honor and leave 6th grade in the elementary schools to keep those students and populations where they're at?
It's pretty complex, right? So, I think that's why I'm asking, we're such a huge system, right? And we're going out, we're doing outreach, and how do we take these really complex questions and issues and break it down where people understand the impact on the whole system? If you make a change in one feeder area, for example. And so I guess I'm just really struggling. Are we asking for input on the middle school model or not, as we're going out and seeking input from our community?
I think that was actually a question, the most recent scuba we did involving actually Prairie Crossing, Cherokee Trail, that was a part of that Pine Grove, Mammoth. That was actually a part of the question that, if Shannon was still here, was actually really part of that conversation around gathering some feedback. I think as we go through potentially processes like the scuba, where we're seeking input from not only our internal staff, but also within our community as well, it's twofold. One, it's gathering input, but I think to your point, it's also the education around it as well too. And I think that's a significant part of gathering feedback. But to gather the feedback that can be purposeful, we've got to do some education around what that is, in particular, uniquely not only within that scenario, but also across the district. Because the idea of what we do in particular around Sierra very much has an impact on Mountain Ridge, as we go through that. And so we want to be mindful about how we're educating what that impact is. To Danelle's point in particular around that directly impacts our elementary-based programming, that we have to be really mindful of that. It's not a 6 through 8, just we're looking from middle school model, but it is a PK through 8 impact on our elementaries as well as our middles.
Yeah, I want to follow up a little bit. Rich, you talked about repurposing buildings and certainly in your presentation, talked about 3 programs that really would benefit or could be housed in repurposed buildings. And I guess one of the questions I think we're going to have, and I think Sandra, with MBAC to explore as well, is there's a line of thinking that we should take care of the repurposing before we go out and start asking for more money for new buildings. So I'm just wondering if we have a sense of that to say, in order to show that we're being good stewards, we're gonna repurpose the facilities we have before we ask voters for additional dollars for new buildings.
Absolutely. The Long-Range Planning Committee and staff, we've discussed that internally many times. That would be a challenge that we, as a system, are going to have to overcome. Like many districts older than Douglas County Schools, we have aging communities, and then we have voids. And so I think the message would be, not only here are we being good stewards, we have a beautiful physical plant in an older school. It's code compliant for educational occupancy E, and we can very efficiently repurpose, and then perhaps it's only a portion of the school, or it's multiple programs in that building. And at the same time, though, we have needs elsewhere that can only be met with new construction, with additional capacity. So 2 very different messages, and understanding resident A in this location is going to have a very different opinion than resident B that's next to a school that may be repurposed. And the message will be to show the benefit of that school, and that it will continue to be a very well-maintained, lit, secure facility that will be a public facility and park after 3:30 every day. I mean, that's part of the message that we'll have to continue to highlight.
So a strategy we've used in the past is to say that every region of our district gets some kind of an improvement when we go out with a bond program. And I haven't analyzed this from that perspective, Rich, but the needs that you've identified, do you feel like that every region would be touched with an improvement?
Absolutely. We have Sterling Ranch up north, the Canyons, Castle Pines, Crystal Valley, and Mesa Middle School. In Castle Rock, we have Sierra Ridge Elementary or Sierra Middle School in North Parker. In addition, we have those programs that could go into Highlands Ranch. We have CTE that would affect every school in the district, and not to mention just the Tier 1 and Tier 2 needs. It's preliminary at this point to say what would be at every school under Tier 1 and Tier 2. By the end of February, no later than March 15th, we will have a project-by-project list for consideration for the MBAC. And some of the discussion could be, if some needs are equal in priority, making sure those are distributed across the district.
Which is what I was kind of hinting at with the transportation security. If we pull those up from Tier 3 and put them as actual priorities in there, those are something that goes into every community and goes across the district.
Absolutely.
And just on that point, I mean, I agree with Director Peterson regarding security. I don't know why we even tier those. I mean, to me, security ought to not even be part of our master capital plan. I mean, security is something that we just put in place regardless. So, I mean, I would, I mean, not to, in transportation, I mean, not to necessarily tell LRPC how to do their work, but I really question why that's part of our planning.
That's very good feedback, because we're already engaged in drafting the next master capital plan. So we can include that. And Again, staff has always had that consideration, but some feedback from the community is they can get their arms around tiers and priorities. But in those cases, IT, security, transportation affect the whole district. And you can have an operational HVAC unit and plumbing, but if you don't have security or IT or transportation, you can't function.
Other questions? All right, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, didn't see you.
This may segue more into the next portion of our conversation, but I'm trying to focus forward. I truly am, but I feel like I'm living in an alternate universe right now as I sit here in this meeting. And I know these presentations were requested, so this is nothing to staff, but I can't believe the level of disconnect with our community and, quite frankly, the offensiveness that we are choosing tonight of all nights to talk about an enormous amount of money that we need from our taxpayers, and then to so callously throw out that this depends on taxpayer trust, like it is something that you are owed because there are needs, rather than something that is earned through actions. I know that these needs are critical to our district, but seeing these numbers in print makes me feel even more discouraged for the future of our district than I did 2 hours ago.
Other directors, other comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Cosgrove, and everyone that presented. And we will move on to item number 6, which is the Mill Bond Ad Hoc Committee, the MBEC Chair Report with Ms. Brownrigg.
Hi. One thing you should all know about me, if you haven't been in a meeting with me before, is that I don't get along with microphones. So just acknowledging that up front, I am mechanically inept. I've got some flyers. Chris, if he can put, I'm going to hand those around, hand them up here into the community too. And by the way, I want to say this first of all. That was a very polished presentation from a long-established entity. I'm a startup and a committee of one. I'm not saying that that's a high bar they set, but y'all be gentle with me because I'm not going to hit that tonight. If there's anything in there that's personal, just ignore it. Hold on a second. Yeah. Would you just hand them around to them? Yeah, and I'm going to give some to you guys because this is a community thing too, so you should not be saying one that look that way. I'm going to use the microphone. Okay. So, it's been 2 weeks since I volunteered for this position. And that's been an eventful 2 weeks, I think we can all agree. The first thing that happened logistically is I put together a membership application that I freely plagiarized from the other committees and simplified, and Interim Superintendent Abner helped get it out along with the help from admin staff, so thank you. And now I'm going to sit back down. The good news is we had 47 people apply in a week. I was DAC chair for 3 years, and we would have that application up sometimes indefinitely and get maybe 20 people. The other really good news is I talked to all 47, well, not to all 47, but to certainly over 40 candidates. I spent half an hour with each one. And so that was kind of an informal focus group. And there was nothing in the questions to ask them their political leanings or what board members they might like or not like. I mean, but you got a sense of the people. And what you have is you have people who are center-right Republicans. You have people who are center-left Democrats. There were some unaffiliated people. If the woman who's out there who told me she's not on social media is listening, she should be on the committee simply because she's smarter than the rest of us. So, there were from every feeder. It's not surprising watching your presentation tonight that the most applied from Thunder Ridge's feeder. I think there's keen interest in this right now. There were 41 neighborhood parents. 4 of those were also charter parents. There were 5 charter parents total. There were 5 employees. There were 2 community members. And so, in a variety of ways, this is a very representative group to give you really good feedback. In the fluidity of the last 2 weeks, as Director Hansen alluded to, it made it a little bit difficult to find firm ground to bring you 6 candidates out of those 41. And the other thing that's kind of even clearer to me tonight is if you have 47 people who want to help you with funding in calm and reasoned voices, the last thing you want to do is pick 6 and tell the other ones to just go on back as they were. I want to keep those people involved. It was kind of like Tom Sawyer and the fence. By the time we got off each call, they were all really excited about painting the fence because, I kind of thought I'd have to persuade them. I didn't have to persuade them. They were already more than halfway there until Saturday morning. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So the idea, the request, which is not a request for action because I have to formulate this and I would like to work with district and perhaps a board liaison. The idea is keep the idea of 12 to 16 people on the committee, meet with the board chairs because I'm in touch with all of them, and then add another element to this. Sounds like working with LRPC would be great too, to have community input groups from each feeder. And then work with the building leadership and the Community Accountability Committee, I know Gary's here tonight, to maybe flush out some community members who are dual income, no kids, empty nesters, make sure it's truly representative so you have some people who can go into their affinity groups, ask for feedback, might pave the way for some presentations into places we haven't always gone, and actually truncate that conversation. Because I do hear the need to regain trust. So let's talk about that in a nonpartisan sort of way. Successful funding requires stability in district leadership, board leadership, and building leadership. Does anybody disagree with that? Culture and climate starts at the leadership level. If there is division at the leadership level, that goes into the entity, whatever kind of organization you have, and it is a hellacious infection to try and get out. Successful funding requires not only stability at the leadership level, then it requires unified support and messaging from district leadership, board leadership, and building leadership. I know we say we're not political here, but the voting process is a political one. The voting community consists of over 100,000 Republicans, a similar number of unaffiliated, and 54,000 Democrats. The vocal community is split between the current conservative majority on the board and the progressive minority. And if any of those words are pejorative, I apologize because it's just how I think of you in my head. It's not actually, pejorative. So, everybody with me so far? Anybody disagree with anything? Somebody disagrees? No. Oh, yes, okay. Yeah. Okay. So also, again, we're not turning this into a different kind of meeting tonight, but I am reflecting back what 40-something of you told me.
Order.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Brownberg. If we can not
That's-
address the audience members,
Yeah.
and just address the
Sorry.
board members. Thank you.
So to address you and also to wrap that up, I'm representing what some of these folks have told me. So it's anecdotal but useful evidence. So the way to look at this, let's move forward, is evaluate these factors through the prism of funding. And so what that means is, it's a really binary question. Does it improve the chance we can pass funding, or does it not? And then layer time on top of that. 2022 is a gubernatorial year, which means you have a higher voter turnout. You tend to have younger voters, people who are more receptive to the idea of education advocacy. Your chances go up. When I took this role 2 weeks ago, another factor that I found to be a positive was that we had 7 board members who had all acknowledged the need for funding. The third piece, I live in Sedalia, hadn't heard that mentioned, Rich, we'll talk about that, but nonetheless, everybody in my community who normally talks about taxes in a negative sort of way, we're talking about teacher salaries and talking about how the teachers had come through COVID and how the teachers deserve a raise. And you know, they're retirees. This was an interesting phenomenon. So 2 weeks ago, I thought an MLO was closer to probable than possible, and a bond was somewhere north of possible. And then things transpired. So when you engage, the question, the request I have for the board is probably the best way to put that. We need guidance on the MBEC from you on how you are going to lead this effort. Because until we get that guidance, since I'm not as smart as the woman who's not on social media, I'm just watching the headwinds increase. And to be very personal, without saying anything except, we have a lot of leadership, we have entrepreneurialism, we have financial acumen, we have legal acumen, we have a world-class expert in de-escalation and collaborative leadership, and we have somebody else who knows a heck of a lot about how to get funding done. So the expertise is in the room, and we can still do it in November. But it really is going to take a shift. So the last emotional part of my pitch is 2 quotes from 2 of the people I talked to. One person on the left said, when you go in there tonight, tell them to press pause. You're talking about a lot of really important issues. These things really need to be thoughtfully discussed, and you need to come to some consensus about those. Press pause. In November, as you were. I'm not really for that, because I'd kind of like to see a change in the dynamic because of that climate and culture. But the guy, another person, sorry, male or female, on the right said, please don't burn down the district just so you can roll over the ashes. And before I took this role, I talked to Director Ray, Director Williams, Director Peterson to validate for myself whether this was going to be something that was challenging and achievable, and whether everybody involved had good intent. And I know that you do. I spoke with a few of you after Superintendent Wise was let go, and I did point out that as an example of a factor, letting a superintendent go in February and putting funding on the ballot in November, those 2 things usually don't go hand in hand. Having a conversation in public about your colleagues probably doesn't increase the likelihood people are going to vote for funding. I can keep going and do every single one of those. It is a waste of time. So, yeah. There are case studies out there because we are in academia. It looks like this when you don't get it right. This is a death spiral. Political pendulum swings, which we've been going through for the last 10 years and look like they may continue, lead to divided leadership, which leads to superintendent turnover. Every time one of you takes the majority, you may let the superintendent go. This is what happens in other districts, which leads to destabilized district leadership, which leads to employee and community mistrust, which leads to the inability to pass funding, which leads to teacher turnover, which leads to staffing shortages, which leads to a drop in student enrollment, which leads to a loss in per pupil funding, which leads to aging and deteriorating facilities, which leads to what? Some districts go through this for a generation, this death spiral, and if you do that, if any of us do that, even me who just volunteered 2 weeks ago, then I am saying to the people who are working in the district today, I'm saying to the students who are taking classes in the district today that they are acceptable collateral damage. And that is not okay with me. So please fix that. Otherwise, we get this. We have way too much goodwill and integrity to get that. So, thank you. Thank you. Let's take it outside after this.
Mr. President, can you please remind the audience that you are in control of this meeting and we are not having public comment? Thank you.
I did not hear the comment. I thought it was someone to the side.
All right, so the next steps for this, I'm in touch with all the board committee chairs and several members. I want to find a role for employees without making them voting members of the committee because we need the teacher and staff voice. So I ran by the superintendent the idea of maybe having a session where staff comes in and presents to the MBEC. I'll work that out, but figuring out pathways to make sure voices are reflected. I'd like to develop the new scope and change and modification of the work process with a board liaison named tonight, working with staff, and present that to you all ahead of the February 22nd meeting. I will present the names of the 6 members who will be the centralized piece as well. There'll be names for everyone who chooses to participate. Tomorrow night, we're having a candidate meeting since we haven't cut anybody loose yet. And so that'll be an informational presentation from the district. It'll be a kind of, here's what's happened so far from me. There'll be a general discussion about this and see if there are any ideas from the community to make this a better process. And then we'll meet again the next week prior to them being approved to kind of go through that as well. Because no matter what, we're pushing the noodle up the hill if we're educating these guys and making them understand how urgent the capital and the operating needs are, irrespective of everything else. We really ought to try and zero in that conversation. I'd like to, I don't know if I'm supposed to work with legal to draft the bylaws, but bylaws, code of conduct, line those up in the next 2 weeks so that we have a draft ready to present. As soon as this group is officially formed, we will pass the documents necessary to legitimize the group. And after that, 3 weeks of informational reception, so they'll have meetings with LRPC and MBOC and all of the board committees to get up to speed on all of that. 3 weeks of synthesis work, and then 3 weeks of shaping the presentation. We have 2 really deep sources of knowledge, which is FOC and LRPC. So this group is not tasked to come up with any needs, and we're not tasked with making any decisions as per the charter. What we are tasked with doing is reflecting the information that you guys provide us back to the community and taking the community's temperature for size, shape, and language. So it may be, if you've been through it before, it may be a very specific small funding instrument, maybe a broader, larger one. It'll be a combination. FOC shapes that. And I'm going to check this with you all because I think what happens next is when we come in April, I had actually thought the independent campaign committee would stand up once you did an up or down vote. But in fact, don't you have until August? So we have the ability to help you all get a communication plan together that really ramps up in April ahead of graduation activities and everything else. runs hard through the summer, gives whoever does the independent campaign committee, who will not be me, time to get up and get running. You guys put it on the ballot in August, your campaign committee, which will be just as diverse, just as able to reach into all parts of the community, stands up. We slide into home in November. Okay. So with that 20-minute presentation, what questions can I answer from any of you?
Sandra, first of all, thank you. What I always appreciate about you is you lay it all out there. And I appreciate that a great deal. Thank you for your honesty, and thank you for taking the reins on this one. I know that is a sacrifice personally, so I just want to applaud you and thank you and express gratitude. One quick logistic question, Sandra. I heard you say that you're choosing 6 out of the 41, and then I heard you say the committee, though, will be 12 to 16. I'm a little confused with that. So you said you're picking 6 from the applicants.
Right.
But then is the 12 to 16 member committee, is that where you're adding then board committee people, or what's making up from the 6 to get to the 16?
One grace that people have said that they might like to have is having a chair and a spare from each board committee, because they already had work in progress. So that was why there's wiggle room there. I won't be naming any more community members, but they may have more than one person. And thank you for that question.
And I absolutely agree with you. If there's a way we can purpose everyone who is interested, I think we need everyone's boots on the ground. You laid out a real honest question that I'm really struggling with, and I guess I need to hear from you. Obviously, superintendent turnover is right up there, and you are saying to us that the likelihood of success in this November is not, given that factor. And so as a person that's walking into this committee, knowing that that is our reality today, that we have not only superintendent turnover, but we also have instability of leadership. What are you thinking as this person who is passionate about moving this project forward? What's our chances? How do you feel in terms of whether or not we should be moving forward with the 2022 initiative?
If I were one of the people who sits at home and pops popcorn and watches this like it's a reality TV show, I would be on social media going, well, first of all, that woman's crazy. And secondly, there's just no way that you guys can come together. And the thing that is different about that is if I don't know you personally, I know people who know you. And at the end of the day, none of you ran for this to be a political animal. You ran for this to help kids. It is at the core of who you are, and it's at the core of who I am. I'm an empty nester. I have absolutely no reason to be sitting here. You love teachers, and you are leaders, or else you couldn't get elected. And so my chances are somewhere north of 60% because I think you can pull it out. And I also feel the same way about district leadership. You know, it's a weird thing to walk into the district. I haven't met some of you yet, but those of you I know who've been sticking around, this is a great place. And the community thinks our baby is ugly, and we need to stop telling them that the baby is ugly, because I walked into Office Depot tonight to get my printouts. I'm not making this up. He goes, excuse me, I see that you're doing a school board thing. He goes, I'm so sorry for you. And I'm like, why? I mean, this is not the way it should be. So I think you guys can turn it around, and I appreciate you thanking me, because that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. You know, that could have gone really sideways if you were not people of character, and you are. So 60% and above, depending on how fast you guys turn the ship, course correct, respectfully.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments. First of all, thank you for just open unvarnished, honest opinion that you have, and thank you for coming here tonight. Thankfully, I think we both sides needed a little bit of a scolding, and I accept that, so thank you. I also appreciate your optimism of thinking that this can still come together. There are common ground issues. We came together on the CU South, now called the Innovation Campus. We can come together on other issues. I think compensation, whether it is in the form of mill levy or whether it's doing the right thing through a potential bond for this community, is something we can come together on. I personally have learned a lot from the last few weeks, lessons that I am internalizing. I think I can ask the other directors. There's been hopefully a noticed outreach to try to come together and at least communicate is the basis of trust. So try to increase the communication, to be transparent in the communication, and frankly, to try to move forward. So we have a superintendent issue. I get it. If we can come together on solving that openly and transparently through public meetings, not rushing, I honor the pause. We were going to check availability for later this week. Directors just can't do it due to individual issues. We are looking at the end of next week. If that doesn't work, we'll find the right time for us to come together. But we will have an open discussion. We will move forward on this together. And more importantly, where the intersection of politics and the district collide, we'll disagree on a lot of things, but we have to always pick the district. And whether you agree that that was done recently or not, we need to move forward and constantly prioritize the district. I appreciate the decorum tonight. I hope we can continue that and have respectful conversation on the issues and not question each other's motives and character. And if we can model, frankly, tonight has mostly been good, little blips, but if we can model that as a board together, publicly and privately, in our reactions with each other, I'll give it more than 60% chance, as long as both sides agree to come together.
Thank you.
I feel like the only way through this is to really go through it, and I need to be honest. Your exact words on Friday night were that you've lost trust with Superintendent Wise and you can't regain that, and that's where I'm at with the four of you. I'm trying. I am open. Your actions in the past 24 hours haven't exactly given me a glimpse of that hope I was really searching for as I heard you and you on Fox News. So I'm just going to put it out there because it's going to be, I'm not being authentic if I'm not telling you that I don't have an ounce of trust for any of you.
Thank you. And again, there's an outreach. I hope we can move forward together, and I hope we can rebuild any trust we have. And we need to do that through actions.
Yeah, I think what I would add is Director Hansen's comment isn't a blip in us being able to be cordial. It's her being honest and sharing. And I honestly think we have to be honest to work through it. And Sandra, thank you. Thank you for your passion and your dedication and your desire to do what's right for kids. And I agree. I think everyone on this board is wants that. They may have different ideas how to get there. But it also takes time. And we've received over 1,200 emails this week alone. And there's a lot of anger and hurt and frustration that I know we can only do what we can do at our level, and we need to, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take authentically working with the community to help address those things. I mean, when teachers and students feel disrespected by comments that have made here on the dais, it takes time to work through that. And so I guess what I'm asking you right now, what are your thoughts on external polling? I mean, that typically happens always with bonds, and potential elections. But we are in a rather unique situation right now, given what we're going through. And, typically at this point in time, you are doing polling and you have your volunteer network set up. Well, those volunteers are many of the people that feel very disrespected right now. And so I'm just struggling trying to think how we pull it together, and I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for that, Director Meek. Do you want to talk about polling? I'm not trying to put you on the, or maybe you weren't there, but.
So where we are as a staff right now with some of this work and what we'd like to be able to do and move things forward is to work everything through our newly formed MBEC committee. And so we are familiar with and have reached out and looked at previous polling companies that have been used. We've also looked at potential tools that are out there. However, we would like for MBEC to evaluate those. And so we'd like to bring them forward to MBEC, have them evaluate those, essentially tell us to move forward with that, those types of things. And so that's where we're at right now. I would say we were moving pretty fast, and then when MBEC was formed, it's like we should slow down a little bit, make sure that they're fully involved and that they have all the information. So that's the work that we currently have. We do have a very rough presentation that we're going to make from staff tomorrow night to the larger group of MBEC. Both Nate Jones, myself, Rich, Kate, will be part of that, and we are presenting on where we sit currently in terms of funding matters, how the state of Colorado funds public education, how that looks in Douglas County from a local perspective, and then we'll be talking about some of the future needs that you've all become very familiar with over the time. So that kind of, that's a long answer to your question, Director Meek, but I just wanted to explain exactly where we are as a staff on the work that we're doing with that.
Well, and in addition, could I address the metric of time, because you asked about time? So if you look at your handouts at the bottom, you have 2022's gubernatorial. I started there and then I got diverted. 2023 is a board election and minority seats will be up for grabs. Typically in that kind of year, the rhetoric in the community about the district is not positive. You have lower voter turnout. It is possible to pass funding in that atmosphere, but unlikely. 2024 is a presidential election. Normally, that's the second best time. If we can't get our capital needs addressed this year, that's the likely runway, and we all kind of know that maybe you have to go out and educate the community for a period of time. However, it's a presidential election year. We have 100,000 plus Republicans in this community, fiscal conservatives. Last time we had over 90% voter turnout. I'm going to bet you that 100% of tax-averse fiscal conservatives will be there. And if we continue to be divided, they'll vote against the funding. We need the people who can advocate for this to be able to get into those groups. 2025 is the majority board seats will be up for election. I'm just going to say that that's probably not a good year to ask for funding. And so that puts us in a box. And the box is, if the kids and the teachers who are in schools today are the ones that we're focused on, and we need to get funding this year, starting with teacher salaries.
Sandra, I think the uniqueness I was thinking about with the polling and everything that needs to happen, I mean, there may be a recall on the election at the same time.
And
I think, we're getting questions from the community. Should we split up the districts? Should we have a north side and a south side? I mean, there's a lot of anger and frustration and confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And I am wondering if there are questions that should be posed out there on a poll around various issues and ideas. I'm throwing this out for consideration for the MBEC as they're meeting. And then I think the other thing, the typical individuals that get behind advocating for MLOs and bonds are the ones that I think we have the most repair that we need to do. And President Peterson, I'd love to hear your thinking. I mean, I've read your statement because you haven't gone on any local media to talk to the local media. So all I have is the statement that you want that you're committed to restoring peace and unity to our school district with a continued focus on educating our children. So what does that look like? How do we work together on that?
Thank you. And I want to focus on this issue and relative to polling. I think we have to do that, but get back to the how do we work together? I said it before, I think this all started where we had a breakdown in communication earlier in the year. And when you have a lack of communication, you have a lack of trust. Certainly, I don't want to record conversations. I don't think we should have to record each other's conversations. And again, if we can focus in meetings on topics instead of impugning motives and character, I think that will go a long way towards bringing this together. So that I ask that this is not just a one side comes to the other side or one side comes to the other side. This is a bit of a meet in the middle, and it has to start with first communications, transparency, and it has to start with mutual respect. So I would suggest that for both sides. And again, I thank Ms. Brownrigg for being honest and presenting her perspective on what goes on. But I think it starts with common ground. If this is the common ground, and frankly, I will include the remaining board members, the new board members, the community. Frankly, I'll even include folks out there that are looking for a pay raise. If that's what the community wants and that's what I believe in and that's what I believe we owe our teachers, then we have to unite behind the effort. Left, right, center, everybody. And we need to move forward together, but that requires communication, respect, and a focus on the issues, not a focus on each other, not a us, them, us. It requires a unique focus on the issue. One last thing, I don't want to relitigate what happened on Friday. I want to move forward on these issues, and if we can look forward instead of back, that will be a great first step.
One suggestion is we stop saying sides. We stop saying majority or minority or whatnot, and I think that language would go a long way.
Well, and if I may interject, if you look at all the questions through the prism of does it help us obtain funding or does it not, it takes everything else out. And it either helps or it doesn't. And it's not about, there is nothing, it's not grubby to resource our schools, our teachers, and our students. And so it's essential that we say we want this to be a healthy, thriving district. Does this help funding or does it not? And whatever has happened in the past, I can only take responsibility for what I have done. And so the ask I would have for you guys is, I'd like to hear a lot more of what I really love what I'm hearing tonight, and I'm not trying to be a kumbaya kind of woman, but when I hear that one of you tells another one what they've done wrong, that is unhelpful. It does not help funding. If I hear personal responsibility, and this is what I've done and this is what I'm changing, that helps build trust, credibility, and everything else. It's just a suggestion. The fact that I'm saying this, again, way out of my comfort zone, but it has to be said.
So Micah, I guess my only disagreement is I don't think this begins with communication. It begins with restoration. I mean, we've all experienced injuries from Friday. We continue to experience injuries through the community's reaction. And I think that's why we're struggling with giving Sandra direction, is because we're trying to push through this business as usual. Or, I mean, if you were to poll us and say, do we need this? There's not one of us that would disagree with that. But what we desperately need as a 7-member board is to have restorative practices first before we can have this quality conversation about how we strategize to really provide a unified front. And so my suggestion really is, I mean, we have some incredible staff members in our mental health department that understand what it takes to restore when there's relational injuries. And I think that's where we need to begin, quite honestly. And I think it's an opportunity for us to actually showcase what social emotional learning is all about. You know, this is stuff we do in the classroom when kids are having conflict. We do restorative circles and we sit down and really work together to see if we can at least relationally get on a better place so that we can do the work we need to do the work. The work that we're being asked to do. And so that's where I really have been hesitant. I know you have a push to want to talk about superintendent search and, you know, guiding the MBEC in terms of what their next steps is. But I would tell you that until we've restored some relational trust, this is going to continue to be something that gets in our way. So my plea to you is use some district expertise that understands mental health, that understands restorative practices, facilitate us to get us to a better place so that we can do the important work. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to have these stalemates where it's like, it just doesn't feel good to work together when we can't even begin to trust each other. So that would be my plea.
Thank you for that input. And again, I think we can move forward together. I think our actions will build trust, and we don't have to, and I want to say this honestly, I think we need to balance being too deliberate and too slow with being too fast and too aggressive. So there's a good middle ground. I think we can talk about that and the pace. But back to something Sandra said, a little bit of a pause, not go too fast, but certainly not such a pause that we are not moving forward with the business of the district. I think there's common ground. And I don't, again, as president, I don't want this to devolve into a session where we are going backwards and now we are getting way off the MBEC topic. So
I'd just like to hear from the other directors.
Yeah,
I have not had a chance to say anything because I think it's
can-
really important that everyone
thank you.
has an opportunity.
We can do that, but again, this is not about, we don't have a board relationship and things on the topic tonight. So if we can go back to the topic of MBEC and what we need to do to support the MBEC, please do that.
The staff that was here from Rich's presentation, I'm not sure, yeah, thank you. Sorry, I should have done this prior to Sandra kicking off her presentation, but the staff, thank you for being here for your portion of the presentation. I realize this is not part of your portion of the presentation, so if you'd like to go ahead and leave, you can. I didn't want to kind of tell you to go and then have an awkward moment or anything along those lines. So thank you for being here tonight, and thanks for your assistance. If there are any questions, okay?
And with that, if we have any questions on MBEC, MBEC reports, MBEC timeline, MBEC composition, that the other directors have a question for Ms. Brownrigg while she's here, please ask that. Any other directors? Director Williams?
So Sandra, thank you so much for putting all this together and all the work that you've done. So you said you're getting together with all applicants tomorrow, is that correct?
Well, as many as can attend in person. We can't, one of the things I didn't realize, we couldn't do a hybrid meeting because that overtaxes district resources. So we'll have an in-person meeting tomorrow and then another one the following week. And I'll follow up with the people who don't, who are unable to attend individually. I'm going to be working on setting up a Google Drive so we can have documents to share. So 2 informational meetings for the group at large, a week to get everything structured. Because the district was already down the path of working on these things, we already have a lot of tailwind behind us on that. So what I do need is I need a board liaison, an official board liaison. And then the 2 ways to look at this is we can have 2 board liaisons, or because again, it's a short time frame, it may make sense to you all to cycle through 2 at a time or whatever you want to do. But, you know, since we're going to have weekly meetings, there's plenty of time to interact. So that I defer completely to you all how you want to do that.
Can you tell us what day of the week and time you're looking at having the weekly meetings?
I can tell you on Thursday. Okay, Thursday.
Ms. Brownrigg, also just to save you extra work, Sandy Maresh has set up a Google Drive So she's been so kind to set that up, and I know Sandy's listening at home. Thank you, Sandy. And so we'll have that and make sure you have access to that for anything and archived things that we need as part of the committee work.
Okay, and she reached out to me and talked about the fact that I might want a public-facing piece for some of this, and so, yeah. And then there was one other thing, what was it? Nope. Like I said, I will have to you all before Friday the 18th, all of the information for a proposal for the next steps, and that'll be an actionable item if you're willing to put that on the agenda the 22nd. I'll be out of town, and I'll Zoom for that.
So what I heard there is you are meeting tomorrow. You would like liaisons at a later date, maybe on the 22nd, official liaisons?
That's fine.
Okay, great. And then we will put the community members on a vote for the agenda for the 22nd.
Okay. And when I looked at the charter, the board president is the current connection to the board. So what I've been doing, because again, I have emailed you or texted you, whatever, and if you're not available, I've gone to the vice president because I'm a hierarchical kind of person. So that's been my way of interacting with you all. If anybody wants to engage with me directly, but please do, always. So, but know that that's what I've done just to expedite things. Thank you.
Any final questions on MBEC? Okay, thank you, Ms. Brownrigg. Moving into the next item number 7, President, Vice President items. As just announced, we will have at 6 to 8 o'clock the MBEC planning meeting in person. That has been noticed, and it will be here in the Wilcox room. We will have some special meeting coming up to be determined by directors based on availability when we can move forward on a superintendent search. Again, pause. We were going to do it this week. We are not going to do it this week. We will do it a future date. There is request in Sandra Marsh. For other folks, we did take a superintendent search survey less than a year ago. Those results have been received, resurrected, and sent back out to the board members. And also, we have legal counsel that I reached out to and has provided advice to what the legal and requirements are to move forward. So that is sitting with all the directors. That was sent out today by Kristen Egger, and people can start researching this so we can eventually move forward. There's board agenda planning that is on for the February 22nd meeting. That will occur on Thursday from 11:30 to 12:30 remotely. There is a dyslexia simulation that is coming up as well. A public notice has been posted for this event, and that is on the 15th. And then my last announcement is on the 17th of February, the District Accountability Committee Winter Forum will take place from 5:30 to 9 p.m. at Rock Canyon High School. Director Williams, do you have any?
Just a quick comment. So Director Ray, and Director Hansen and Director Meek, I agree. We have healing to do here, and I am not opposed to using our really great, fine people of the district to kind of help us find some common ground. I think that would be beneficial for all of us. So that's my only comment.
Okay, with that, we will move to number 8, board directors announcements. So other board directors, I guess I'll just start right down the end of here. Director Weininger, do you have any announcements?
More of just a comment. It was rightfully asked at the last FOC agenda planning of what my maternity leave looks like. And so my due date is March 25th. So I still plan on attending committee meetings and board meetings, whether that's through Zoom or in person. So there won't be a break of time where I won't be here, just so everyone knows.
Thank you, Director Weininger. Director Hansen, do you have anything? Director Meek.
All I was going to announce was the DAC forum next week, so I do want to encourage parents or anyone listening to attend that forum with the focus on mental health and supports for our students. I think it's going to be a really phenomenal event, and the DAC committee has put in a lot of time helping to orchestrate that, along with Mr. Reynolds.
Dr. Ray.
I was premature in my announcement in terms of encouraging us to do exactly what Director Williams just supported as well. So thank you, and I'll leave it at that. I think that should be our next meeting.
From a committee perspective, I am meeting with the chairman of the Equity Advisory Council tomorrow morning, and there's an Equity Advisory Council in-person meeting tomorrow night that Directors Meek and I will both be attending. Director Myers.
Nothing at this time.
Okay, at this point, we'll move on with the next agenda item, which are actually items 9 and 10, which is to convene in executive session and adjournment. The board may hold an executive session for considering limited matters, including real estate matters, e.g. the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real, personal, or other property pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-4024A, to hold conferences with the board's attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-4024B, matters required to be kept confidential by federal or state law or rules and regulations pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-4024C, to be advised on specialized details of security arrangements and investigations pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-4024D, to determine positions relative to matters that are or will be subject to contract negotiations, developing strategy for those negotiations, and instructing negotiators pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-4024E, personnel matters including actions, updates, and superintendent recommendations involving individual employees pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024F, to consider documents protected by non-disclosure provisions of Colorado Open Records Act and pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024G, and or to be advised on individual student matters where public disclosure would adversely affect the person or persons involved pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024H. The recommendation is that the Board of Education adjourn the study session and convene an executive session, a closed session, for purposes of consideration of real estate matters pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024A involving the transfer or sale of real property regarding the following sites: Topher Park property, Sweetwater Park property, and property located in Castle Pines on Monarch Boulevard, and holding conference with the district's attorney to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B, including conferences to receive legal advice regarding the transfer or sale of such real property. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting and meet in executive session per the recommendation?
Before a motion, I have questions. Director Peterson, typically we get a executive session view only or board view only for, or an agenda for the board to view only for an executive session agenda. We did not receive that. And although I think the topics are pretty clear that you've just listed, I'm a little uncomfortable because I've received nothing that's provided background for what our executive session will be discussing, which we typically do have that. So I'm a little uncomfortable with going into executive session specifically around legal advice on specific legal questions. If those questions are any questions that are not related to the transfer of the real estate property, I don't know that I can support voting to go into executive session because we have not noticed it properly for the board directors tonight.
To answer the question, any legal questions pursuant to 24-6-4024B to get legal advice will only regard the transfer of the aforementioned properties, Topher Park, Sweetwater Park, and the property located on Monarch Boulevard. There will not be any other legal advice given except for legal consultation around those properties.
Thank you. And then my first question, is there a reason that we did not receive, as we have in the past, an executive session agenda for this particular session?
Not that I am aware of. Council Clemech, do you have any comments on that?
It is my understanding that we are going into executive session consistent with the way we have in the past. There had been a confidential memo sent to the board prior to this. and in that regard. And I'm not going to comment further in order to preserve attorney-client privilege.
And I thank you for that. I will just say that if we look at our agenda list, we always have a separate executive session agenda noticed beyond just the notice in our regular session. So I will just point that out, that is different. I have the list here if you want to see that, Ms. Clemish, but I don't expect further explanation other than it is not our current practice or a past practice where we identify a separate agenda in our list. So currently, our public noticing of agendas are inaccurate because the only notice is what Director Peterson just did during the regular meeting, if that makes sense.
To the extent that Director Ray has any objection to the notice of the meeting, I believe that the executive session could be postponed until the upcoming regular meeting, and that in the interim, I would ask that Director Ray please consult with us with respect to his objection.
And I would be willing to go into executive session tonight if we can do something retroactive just to make sure our public record is accurate to show that on this date, we did go into executive session in terms of a display of a separate session. I don't have a problem going in tonight with what you've stated. I appreciate the clarification that legal questions will only be about real estate matters, but I would just like to see it rectified for our public.
Council Clemesh, is that something we can legally do, go back and amend the session as if required to provide some type of executive session?
I guess without knowing exactly what Director Ray is referring to, I'm not in a position to comment with respect to whether or not it is legally consistent or authorized.
Okay. At this point, I think we have a recommendation to go to adjourn the meeting and meeting executive session per the recommendation, and the requested individuals would be all directors, both acting superintendents, Andy Abner and Danelle Hyatt, and Chief Operations Officer Rich Cosgrove, and also Council Mary Kay Clemesh. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting and meet in executive session per the recommendation, knowing that the only legal advice that will be discussed would be legal advice relative to the sale of the 3 aforementioned properties?
So moved. Second.
Call the roll. Hanson. Meek. Aye. Myers. Aye. Peterson, aye. Ray. Aye. Williams. Aye. Weiniger. And for those that could not hear at home, because we did not pass the mic, all 7 directors voted 7-0 to adjourn the meeting and enter executive session as required. I hereby adjourn the meeting, and we will proceed to executive session in a closed session.